The message arrived at midnight on Nexus Prime. Ambassador Velrath Sindori was sleeping in his quarters when his personal assistant woke him with urgent news. A survey vessel in the outer reach had found something. They had found a new species. Velrath rubbed his 4 eyes and sat up slowly. His blue scales caught the soft light of his room. In his 300 years of service to the Covenant of United Species, he had seen many things. New species were discovered every few decades. It was usually a simple matter. The Covenant would send diplomats. They would explain the rules of civilized space. The new species would join, or they would be left alone to develop. Nothing complicated, but his assistant's face told him this was different. "Show me the report," Velrath said. The holographic display flickered to life above his desk. He read the first few lines and felt his stomach turn cold. The survey team was requesting immediate evacuation. They were afraid. The Covenant survey teams were not easily frightened. They were trained professionals who had explored the darkest corners of the galaxy. They had encountered hostile life forms, dangerous environments, and cosmic horrors that would break lesser minds. Yet here they were, begging to be rescued from a species that had only achieved faster than light travel 300 years ago. Velrath dressed quickly and made his way to the council chambers. The halls of the great building were empty at this hour, but he could see lights turning on in other sections. He was not the only one who had been woken. The Council of 12 governed the Covenant. They represented the founding species who had created galactic civilization over 10,000 years ago. They had built an empire of peace that stretched across 12 spiral arms and 4 million worlds. They had seen everything, or so they thought. When Velrath entered the chamber, 5 of the 12 council members were already present. More were arriving every minute. Grand Admiral Threx of the Vorn military stood near the main display, his massive armored form casting long shadows across the floor. High Priestess Yenna of the Celestial Order sat in quiet meditation, her pale skin glowing faintly with inner light. Chief Scientist Morath of the Analytical Collective was already studying the data, his 8 mechanical arms manipulating multiple screens at once. "What do we know?" Velrath asked. Morath turned one of his optical sensors toward the ambassador. "The species calls itself human. They originate from a planet they name Earth, orbiting an ordinary yellow star in the outer regions of the galaxy. Their territory currently encompasses 47 star systems. They achieved interstellar travel approximately 300 standard years ago." "That is not remarkable," Admiral Threx said. His voice was deep and rumbling, like stones grinding together. "Why has this caused such alarm?" "Because nothing about them makes sense," Morath replied. He pulled up a biological scan on the main display. The creature shown was bipedal, with 2 arms, 2 eyes, and soft skin. It looked fragile, weak. Their average lifespan is 120 standard years. The chamber went silent. Velrath felt his scales tighten against his body. 120 years. That was nothing. Most civilized species live for at least 1,000 years. The Kethmari, his own people, regularly reach 1,500. How could any species achieve space travel in such a short time? "That cannot be correct," High Priestess Yenna said softly. "A species with such short lives would never have time to develop the knowledge needed for interstellar travel. They would die before completing their education." "And yet they have done it," Morath said. "But that is not the most disturbing element of the report." He changed the display to show the planet Earth. "This is their home world." Velrath studied the image. It was a small, rocky planet with large oceans and varied terrain. Mountains, deserts, forests, ice caps. The axial tilt was severe, causing extreme seasonal changes. The tectonic plates were active, causing frequent earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The atmosphere contained a gas called oxygen, which was highly reactive and potentially toxic. "This world is classified as a Category 7 death world," Morath continued. It experiences constant environmental hazards, extreme temperature variations, massive storms. The planet itself is trying to kill everything on it at all times. No intelligent species has ever evolved on a death world, Admiral Threx said. It is not possible. The survival pressures are too extreme. Creatures on such worlds must dedicate all their energy to simply staying alive. Humans did not just evolve on this world, Morris said. They became its dominant species. They conquered every environment on it. They spread to every corner of their planet before they even developed basic technology. They did this while living only 120 years. Velrath walked closer to the display. He examined the biological data more carefully. The humans had no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no venom. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. They were slower than most predators. Their senses were limited compared to many species. How did they survive? He asked. We do not know, Morath admitted. Their physical form suggests they should have gone extinct millions of years ago. Instead, they became apex predators. They hunted creatures many times their size. They developed tools, language, and social structures. They built civilizations. Perhaps they are simply very intelligent, Yenna suggested. Intelligence can overcome physical limitations. Their intelligence is above average but not exceptional, Morath said. By galactic standards, they rank in the upper third but nowhere near the top. There are dozens of species more intelligent than humans who have achieved far less. The doors to the chamber opened, and the remaining council members entered. Among them was the eldest, a being known only as the Observer. No one knew what species the Observer belonged to. No one knew how old the Observer was. The Observer had been on the council since before anyone could remember. The Observer looked at the display showing Earth. Then the Observer spoke, and everyone listened. Show them the final transmission. Morath hesitated. Then he activated the recording. The screen showed a Kethmari scientist named Researcher Ven. He was inside a small ship, and he looked terrified. His scales had turned white with fear. This is Researcher Ven of Survey Team 7, the recording said. We have been observing the human species for 3 standard days. We maintained all protocols. We stayed hidden. Our stealth systems were fully operational. There is no way they could have detected us. Ven's voice cracked. His eyes kept darting to something off-screen. They found us. I do not know how. We detected no scans, no signals, nothing. But 6 hours ago, a human vessel appeared next to our ship. It matched our course and speed exactly. A human looked through the viewport at me. He smiled and waved. The recording flickered. Ven was breathing too fast. They know we have been watching them. They know everything. When we tried to leave, they did not stop us. They let us go. I do not understand. If they wanted to capture us, they could have. If they wanted to destroy us, we would be dead. Instead, they just watched us leave. One of them transmitted a message to us as we entered faster than light travel. The message said, "Thank you for visiting, and please come again soon." The recording ended. The chamber was completely silent. They detected a stealth vessel using technology 5,000 years ahead of their own. Admiral Threx said slowly. They matched its course without being detected themselves. They chose to reveal themselves at a time of their choosing, and then they let our people go. They were studying us, Velrath realized. The entire time we thought we were observing them, they were observing us. There is more, Morath said. His voice had changed. He sounded almost afraid. I have been analyzing the human database that the survey team collected before they fled. I found their historical records. And, Yenna asked, in their history, humans have fought over 15,000 wars against each other. The words hit Velrath like a physical blow. 15,000 wars. War was the ultimate barbarism. Species that made war against themselves always destroyed themselves within a few generations. It was a universal constant. Civil war meant extinction. That is impossible, Admiral Threx said. No species survives that level of internal conflict. Humans have not merely survived, Morath said. They have grown stronger. Each war taught them new ways to fight, new ways to kill, new ways to survive being killed. Their military technology advanced more during wartime than during peace. They did not destroy themselves. They used destruction to evolve. Monsters, Yenna whispered. They are monsters. Perhaps, the observer said, or perhaps they are something we have never encountered before. Something that does not follow the rules we thought were universal. A chime sounded through the chamber. An alert. Morath checked his instruments, and his mechanical arms went still. 3 vessels have just appeared at the edge of council space, one he said. They are human ships. They are not armed. How can you be certain they are not armed? Threx demanded. Because they told us. They are transmitting openly on all frequencies. They say they are ambassadors. They wish to speak with us. They say they come in peace. Velrath looked at the display. 3 small ships floating in the darkness of space. They looked primitive, simple, harmless. But he knew now that nothing about humans was simple. They knew we would find them, he said. They planned for this. The survey team finding them, the records we collected, even this meeting. They have been waiting for us. Then we should not keep them waiting, the observer said. Let them come. Let them speak. We must know what we are dealing with. And if they are hostile? Threx asked. If they were hostile, we would already be dead, the observer replied. A species that has fought 15,000 wars and survived does not reveal itself unless it chooses to. They want something from us. We must find out what. Velrath watched as the human vessels began their approach. They moved slowly, carefully, making no threatening gestures. They followed every diplomatic protocol perfectly, as if they had studied the Covenant's procedures for centuries. Perhaps they had. As the ambassador of the Kethmari people, Velrath would be responsible for the initial contact. He would be the first to speak with these creatures from a death world. These short-lived monsters who had fought 15,000 wars and conquered their own extinction. These beings who had detected undetectable ships and let the Watchers go free. He thought about the human who had waved at researcher Venn through the viewport. That smile, that casual gesture, as if finding an alien species was an everyday occurrence. As if nothing in the universe could surprise them. What did you have to survive to become that calm? What did you have to overcome to smile at the unknown instead of fearing it? Velrath did not know, but he was about to find out. The council voted to allow the human vessels to dock at Nexus Prime. The vote was not unanimous. Several members wanted to destroy the ships before they could get any closer, but the observers' words had convinced enough of them. If humans wanted war, they would not have announced themselves. They would have attacked without warning, the way they had apparently attacked each other 15,000 times throughout their history. The fact that they were asking for permission, following protocols, being polite, meant something. It meant they had a plan, and Velrath desperately wanted to know what that plan was. He stood in the docking bay as the first human ship touched down. The vessel was smaller than he had expected, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. The hull was covered in strange markings that his translator identified as a language called English. The door opened. 5 humans walked out. They were shorter than Velrath had expected, barely reaching his shoulder. Their skin came in different shades, from pale pink to deep brown. Their hair was various colors as well. They wore simple clothing with no visible weapons. They were smiling. The leader of the group was a female with dark hair and bright eyes. She walked forward with complete confidence, as if she belonged here, as if she had always belonged here. Ambassador Velrath Sindori, she said. Her voice was pleasant, warm. Thank you for receiving us. I am Director Sarah Chen of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. We have been looking forward to this meeting for a very long time. Velrath forced himself to remain calm. He had done this thousands of times. He had met with kings and conquerors, scientists and warriors. He was a professional, but he had never met anything like humans. Director Chen, he replied, welcome to Nexus Prime. The Council is prepared to hear whatever you wish to say. Chen's smile widened. Wonderful. We have so much to tell you. She glanced back at her companions, then returned her gaze to Velrath. I hope you have plenty of time, Ambassador. Human history is quite long and quite interesting. She began walking toward the council chambers, not waiting for an escort. She knew exactly where to go. Velrath followed her, his mind racing. They had been watching the Covenant far longer than the Covenant had been watching them. They knew everything about galactic civilization. They had learned the languages, the protocols, the politics. They had prepared for this moment, and now they were here, smiling and polite, ready to reveal themselves to the galaxy. Velrath could not shake the feeling that whatever came next would change everything. The Covenant had stood for 10,000 years. It had survived wars, plagues, and cosmic disasters. It had united millions of species under one banner of peace, but it had never faced humans. As he walked behind Director Chen, watching her confident stride, Velrath wondered if the galaxy was ready for what was coming. He suspected it was not. The Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Prime was the largest enclosed space in the known galaxy. It had been built 10,000 years ago to hold representatives from every species in the Covenant. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top. Its floor could hold 1 million beings standing shoulder to shoulder. Today it held only a few thousand, but those few thousand represented the most powerful civilizations in existence. They had come to see the humans. Ambassador Velrath stood near the front of the hall, watching as Director Sarah Chen and her 4 companions took their places on the speaking platform. The humans looked impossibly small in that vast space. They should have seemed insignificant. They did not. Chen stood at the center, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked out at the assembled species with calm curiosity, as if she were the one observing them, rather than the other way around. The other humans spread out behind her, equally relaxed. Velrath noticed that one of the humans, a large male with dark skin and scars on his arms, was not wearing a breathing mask. The atmosphere of Nexus Prime was designed for the majority of Covenant species. It contained trace elements that were mildly toxic to many oxygen breathers. The humans had been offered environmental suits. They had refused. Before we begin, Chen said, her voice amplified to reach every corner of the hall, I want to thank you all for this opportunity. Humanity has waited a long time for this day. We have many things to share with you. We have questions first, Admiral Threx called out from his position among the Vorn delegation. Your survey team's data raised many concerns. Of course, Chen replied. We expected questions. Please ask whatever you wish. We will answer honestly. High Priestess Yenna rose from her seat. Her pale form seemed to glow in the hall's lighting. The data we collected indicates your species has an average lifespan of only 120 standard years. How is this possible? How do you achieve anything in such a short time? Chen's expression did not change. The data is correct. 120 years is actually quite long for us. A few centuries ago, our average lifespan was less than 40 years. A murmur ran through the hall. 40 years. Some of the species present took longer than that to complete basic education. We achieve things quickly because we must, Chen continued. We do not have the luxury of time. Every human knows that their life is short. This makes us value each moment. It makes us work faster, think harder, push further. We cannot wait for solutions. We must find them now, or we will die before they come. But knowledge, Yenna pressed. The accumulation of wisdom across generations. How do you pass on what you learn? We write everything down, Chen said simply. We invented writing thousands of years ago, specifically because we knew we would die and forget. Every generation records what it learns so the next generation can start where they left off. We do not rely on individual memory. We rely on collective memory. Books, databases, schools. We teach our children everything we know as fast as we can because we know we will not be there to teach them forever. The human with the scars shifted slightly. Velrath noticed that despite standing still, the man's eyes never stopped moving. He was tracking every being in the hall, cataloging threats, planning responses. It was a soldier's habit, the kind of habit that came from fighting many battles. Your home world, Chief Scientist Morath spoke up. His mechanical arms gestured toward a holographic display of Earth. Our analysis classifies it as a Category 7 death world. Extreme environmental variance, tectonic instability, toxic atmosphere, predatory megafauna. How did your species survive? Chen actually laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine. That is a complicated question, Chief Scientist. The short answer is that we almost did not. Many times. Let me explain. She gestured and the holographic display changed. It showed a timeline of Earth's history. 4 billion years ago, our planet formed from cosmic dust. For most of that time, it was completely hostile to complex life. The atmosphere was poison. The surface was volcanic. Meteors struck constantly. Life began in the oceans, simple cells that slowly evolved over billions of years. Our ancestors were prey animals, small, weak, hunted by everything larger than them. The display showed primitive humans, barely recognizable. They were thin, frightened creatures huddled in caves while predators prowled outside. We had no claws, no fangs, no venom, no armor. Our bodies were soft and easily damaged. We were slower than the creatures that hunted us. Our senses were weaker. By every measure, we should have gone extinct. Then how did you survive? Threx demanded. We cheated, Chen said. We invented cheating. We could not outrun predators, so we learned to make traps. We could not outfight them, so we made weapons. Rocks at first, then spears, then bows, then guns. Each generation invented new ways to kill things bigger than themselves. She paused, letting her words sink in. But weapons were only part of it. We also learned to work together. 1 human is weak. 10 humans are dangerous. 100 humans can bring down any predator on our world. We formed tribes, then villages, then cities. We shared knowledge. We protected each other. We became the most dangerous pack hunters our planet had ever seen. The display changed again. It showed humans spreading across Earth, colonizing every environment. Deserts, mountains, frozen wastelands, tropical jungles. They adapted to each one. Our bodies could not change fast enough to match our environments, Chen explained. So we changed our environments to match our bodies. Too cold? We made fire. We made clothes from the skins of animals we killed. Too hot? We dug wells for water. We built shelters from the sun. No food? We invented farming. We domesticated animals. We bent our entire planet to our will because we refused to die. Ambassador Velrath felt his scales tighten. There was something disturbing about the way Chen spoke. Not threatening exactly, but intense. She was describing survival as if it were a war, and every human had been a soldier since birth. Your adaptation is impressive, Morath said, but it does not explain your rapid technological advancement. Even accounting for your short lifespans and collective knowledge systems, your progress is abnormally fast. Chen's smile faded slightly. You are correct. Our survival instincts alone do not explain our technology. There is another factor. She looked out at the assembled species. Her expression was unreadable. Competition, she said. Specifically war. The hall went silent. Velrath saw several ambassadors shifting uncomfortably. War was not discussed openly in civilized space. It was considered barbaric, primitive. Species that made war eventually destroyed themselves. Everyone knew this. According to our records, Chen continued, humanity has fought approximately 15,400 wars throughout our history. This number does not include minor conflicts, rebellions, or border skirmishes, only major organized warfare between significant populations. A Kethmari ambassador near Velrath made a choking sound and collapsed. Medical personnel rushed to assist. Chen watched with what appeared to be genuine concern, then continued. I understand this is disturbing to you. It is disturbing to us as well. War is terrible. We know this better than anyone. Humans have killed more humans than any other cause throughout our history. We have invented thousands of ways to destroy each other. We have committed atrocities that I will not describe in this setting. She paused. But war also drove our advancement. Each conflict forced us to develop new technologies, new strategies, new ways of thinking. Our ancestors discovered fire to survive the cold. They discovered metallurgy to make better weapons. They discovered chemistry to make explosives. They split the atom to make bombs that could destroy entire cities. You developed nuclear weapons? Admiral Threx's voice was sharp. Nuclear technology was restricted under Covenant law. Species were not permitted to develop it until they had proven themselves stable enough to handle it. We developed them. We used them. Twice in a single war. 2 cities were destroyed in moments. Hundreds of thousands died. Chen's voice was flat, factual. After that, we nearly destroyed ourselves completely. For decades, we lived under the threat of total annihilation. We came within minutes of ending our own species on multiple occasions. Then how are you still here? Yenna asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. Because we chose to be. Every time we stood at the edge of extinction, we stepped back. Not because we became less dangerous. We became more dangerous with every generation. But we also became wiser. We learned that there were some weapons too terrible to use. We learned that some victories were not worth winning. The scarred human behind Chen spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and rough. We have weapons in our arsenals that we will never use. Biological agents that could wipe out entire planets. Chemical compounds that cause suffering beyond description. Theoretical devices that could crack worlds in half. We developed them because we could. We do not use them because we choose not to. Chen nodded. This is the truth about humanity. We are capable of anything. Absolutely anything. The only limit on our actions is our own choice. We can be the most creative, compassionate, loving beings in existence. We can also be monsters beyond your worst nightmares. The difference is entirely up to us. Velrath found himself stepping forward. He had not intended to speak, but the words came out anyway. Why are you telling us this? If you wanted to present yourselves favorably, you would hide these things. Instead, you are revealing your darkest history. Why? Chen turned to look at him directly. Her eyes were brown, warm, but there was something behind them, something old and tired and dangerous. Because you would have found out eventually, Ambassador. You are already studying us. Your scientists are analyzing our data. Within a few years, you would have learned everything I am telling you now. And if you had discovered it without us telling you, you would assume we were hiding worse. She spread her hands. We have nothing to hide. This is who we are. Survivors of a death world. Fighters of 15,000 wars. Builders of weapons that could end civilizations. We are everything you fear, and we know it. We have always known it. Then what do you want from us? Threx demanded. If you are as powerful as you claim, why come to us at all? Why not simply take what you want? Chen's expression softened. For a moment she looked almost sad. Because we are tired, Admiral. Tired of fighting. Tired of struggling alone. For all of our history, we have had no one to rely on but ourselves. No allies among the stars. No friends in the darkness. Just us, fighting and dying and rebuilding, generation after generation. She looked out at the assembled species again. When we discovered that the galaxy was full of life, full of civilizations that had learned to live in peace, we could not believe it. We had assumed that the universe was as hostile as our homeworld. We thought that survival meant eternal conflict, but you proved us wrong. You built something beautiful out here, something we want to be part of. You want to join the Covenant? Yenna asked. We want to be your friends, Chen said simply. We want to trade with you, learn from you, share what we have learned with you. We do not want to conquer anyone. We have had enough of conquest. We want something different now, something better. The hall was quiet. Velrath could see the conflict on faces throughout the room, fear and hope and disbelief all mixed together. How can we trust you? He asked. Everything you have told us suggests that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. How can we believe that you come in peace? Chen smiled again. This time there was real warmth in it. You cannot trust us. Not yet. Trust takes time. We know this. All we ask is that you give us the chance to prove ourselves. Watch us. Study us. Test us. We will submit to whatever evaluation you require. We have nothing to hide and everything to gain. She glanced at her companions, then back at the assembly. There is one more thing you should know. We did not reveal ourselves because we thought the time was right. We revealed ourselves because we had to. What do you mean? Threx asked. There are factions within human space who want to conquer the galaxy. They are currently a minority, but they exist. They believe that humanity's destiny is to rule over all other species. They see the Covenant as a target, not a potential ally. The tension in the hall spiked immediately. Why tell us this? Velrath demanded. You are giving us reason to attack you before these factions can act. Because if you attack us, those factions will be proven right, Chen said. They will tell every human that the galaxy wants us dead, that we can only survive through conquest, that peace was never an option, and then you will face a united humanity, billions of beings who have fought 15,000 wars and won them all. She let the words hang in the air. We came to you because we want peace. The best way to ensure peace is to make humanity part of the Covenant, to give our people something to protect instead of something to conquer. We are not asking you to trust us blindly. We are asking you to give us a chance to earn your trust. The alternative benefits no one. The assembly erupted into chaos. Hundreds of voices speaking at once, debating, arguing, shouting. Admiral Threx was demanding immediate military action. High Priestess Yenna was calling for calm. The observer sat in silence, watching everything with ancient eyes. Through it all, Director Chen stood motionless on the platform. She did not try to speak over the noise. She simply waited. Velrath approached her, pushing through the crowd until he stood directly below the platform. She looked down at him with those warm, dangerous eyes. Everything you have told us, he said quietly, your wars, your weapons, your history, this is what you are willing to reveal. What are you hiding? What is humanity truly capable of? Chen's smile faded. She knelt down so that her face was level with his. Ambassador, everything I have told you is from our history books, what we teach our children, what every human knows. She leaned closer. What we are capable of now is classified, but I will tell you this much. In the 300 years since we achieved interstellar travel, we have not been idle. We have been preparing. For anything, for everything. She stood up again. If you choose to be our friends, you will see that capability used to protect you. If you choose to be our enemies, you will see it used against you. That is the only choice that matters. Velrath felt cold despite the warmth of the hall. He had asked the question, hoping for reassurance. Instead, he had received a warning. Humanity was offering peace, but behind that offer was a promise. We are trying to be good, but we can be so much worse. The assembly continued to argue long into the night, but Velrath knew that the decision had already been made, not by the council, but by humanity itself. They had revealed themselves. They had offered friendship, and they had made it very clear what would happen if that offer was refused. The galaxy would never be the same. The validation array was a space station the size of a small moon. It orbited a dying star in neutral space, far from any inhabited system. For 10,000 years it had served one purpose: to test new species before they could be integrated into the Covenant. Every species that joined the Covenant had to pass through the validation array. Their technology was examined. Their military capabilities were assessed. Their threat level was calculated. This allowed the Council to know exactly what they were dealing with before granting membership. No species had ever exceeded a Class 4 threat rating. The scale went to 10, but the upper levels were theoretical. They were included only because scientists like complete systems. No one had ever expected any species to reach them. Until now. Ambassador Velrath stood in the observation room, watching through reinforced glass as the first human test subject entered the physical assessment chamber. The human was a female soldier named Sergeant Maya Torres. She was small by human standards, with dark hair tied back and brown skin marked by several scars. The first assessment will measure baseline physical capabilities, Chief Scientist Marath announced through the communication system. Speed, strength, endurance, sensory perception, pain tolerance, standard protocols. Torres nodded. She did not look nervous. She looked bored. The test began. Velrath watched as Torres ran through obstacle courses designed to test agility. She was not remarkably fast. Several Covenant species were quicker, but she did not stop. She maintained a steady pace long after most species would have collapsed from exhaustion. When the observers asked how long she could continue, she shrugged and said she could go for days if necessary. The strength tests were similar. Torres was not the strongest species in the galaxy, but she could lift heavy weights and carry them for extended periods. Her muscles seemed designed for endurance rather than explosive power. She was built to last. Fascinating, Morath murmured, studying the data. Human muscles contain a mixture of fast and slow twitch fibers that allow them to perform both quick movements and sustained effort. Their bodies are designed for persistence hunting. What is persistence hunting? Velrath asked. An ancient technique. Instead of chasing prey quickly and catching it, persistence hunters follow their target for hours or days until it collapses from exhaustion. Humans cannot outrun most animals in short distances, but they can keep moving when almost every other creature must stop to rest. Velrath thought about this. It was terrifying in a quiet way. Humans did not need to be faster or stronger than their enemies. They just needed to keep coming, never stopping, never resting, following their prey until it could no longer run. The pain tolerance tests began. Torres was subjected to various discomforts: electrical stimulation, extreme temperatures, pressure on sensitive areas. She responded to all of them but did not stop functioning. When the observers increased the intensity to levels that would incapacitate most species, she simply gritted her teeth and continued performing tasks. "How are you doing this?" Morath asked through the speaker. "Your nerve responses indicate significant pain. You should be unable to function." Torres wiped sweat from her forehead. "Pain is just information. It tells me something is wrong. It does not tell me to stop. I decide when to stop. Your body is sustaining damage. I know. I will heal. You may not heal completely. Some of this damage could be permanent." Torres looked directly at the observation glass. Her expression did not change. "I understand. Continue the test." They continued the test. Torres completed every task. Her hands were shaking by the end, Blood was dripping from her nose, but she was still standing, still functional, still ready for more. The medical assessment that followed revealed more disturbing information. Human bodies were remarkably resilient. They could recover from injuries that would kill most species. Broken bones healed, damaged tissue regenerated. Even severe wounds could be survived if treated quickly. Their healing factor is not exceptional by galactic standards, Morath noted. Several species heal faster, but humans heal while remaining active. They do not need to rest and recover. They can fight and heal at the same time. That should not be possible, Admiral Threx said. He had arrived an hour ago, officially to observe, but clearly because he did not trust the humans out of his sight. The energy required for both activities would be enormous. Humans consume significantly more calories than comparable species, Morath replied. Their metabolism is extremely high. They burn energy constantly, even at rest. This allows them to perform multiple biological functions simultaneously. Velrath looked at Torres, who was now receiving medical attention for her test injuries. She was talking casually with the medical staff, even laughing at something one of them said. She had just endured hours of physical torture, and she was laughing. What kind of species laughed at pain? The psychological assessment began the next day. A fresh human was brought in, a male named Lieutenant James Okonkwo. He was tall and thin, with a calm demeanor and intelligent eyes. The tests were designed to measure mental resilience, sensory deprivation, psychological pressure, simulated scenarios designed to cause stress and fear. These tests had broken hardened warriors from dozens of species. They were considered the most challenging part of the validation process. Okonkwo sat in the isolation chamber for 3 days. No light, no sound, no stimulation of any kind. When he emerged, he seemed slightly annoyed, but otherwise unchanged. "How do you feel?" the observers asked. "Bored," Okonkwo replied. "I spent the time reviewing training protocols in my head, also composed a few poems. Not very good ones, but it passed the time." The psychological pressure tests followed. Interrogation techniques, manipulation attempts, scenarios designed to make subjects feel hopeless, afraid, or alone. Okonkwo responded to all of them with polite patience. "You cannot break what has already been broken and rebuilt," he explained when asked about his resilience. "Humans break all the time. We break as children when we learn that the world is not fair. We break as adolescents when we discover our own limitations. We break as adults when we face failure and loss. But we do not stay broken. We heal. We rebuild. We come back stronger." He smiled slightly. "Your tests are designed to break someone who has never been broken, but every human has been broken multiple times before adulthood. Your techniques are familiar to us. We have already survived them." The simulated torture scenarios began. Velrath could not watch all of them. The methods used were effective against most species. They caused extreme psychological distress without physical harm. Okonkwo endured them all. His vital signs indicated stress, but he remained functional. He completed every task assigned to him, even while being subjected to conditions that had shattered the minds of hardened warriors. When asked how this was possible, he gave the same answer Torres had given. "Pain is information. Fear is a warning. They tell me that something is wrong. They do not tell me what to do about it. That is my choice. I choose to continue." The technological assessment was conducted on the 3rd day. Director Chen herself presented this portion, along with several human scientists and military advisors. "We will demonstrate a selection of our current military capabilities," Chen announced. "We want to be transparent about what humanity can do. However, I must note that some of our technologies are classified. We will not reveal everything." "Why not?" Threx demanded. "Because there are some weapons we hope never to use. Demonstrating them serves no purpose except to frighten you. We are here to build trust, not fear. Threx looked skeptical, but he did not argue. The demonstrations began with standard military technology. Human weapons were effective but not exceptional. Their ships were fast but not the fastest. Their shields were strong but not the strongest. By galactic standards, they seemed to be a mid-tier military power. Then Chen showed them the special technologies. Human biological weapons could target specific genetic sequences. They could create plagues that killed only one species while leaving all others unharmed. They could modify viruses to spread through populations before activating, ensuring maximum infection before symptoms appeared. Human chemical weapons caused suffering that could not be described in polite company. They attacked nervous systems, caused hallucinations, triggered extreme pain responses. Some of them could keep a victim alive and conscious for weeks while their body slowly dissolved. Human psychological weapons could break minds without physical contact. Propaganda systems, information warfare, techniques for manipulating entire populations into acting against their own interests. And then there were the weapons Chen would not demonstrate. These are theoretical technologies, she said, gesturing to a list on the display. We have the scientific understanding to build them. We have chosen not to. The list included planet crackers, star killers, dimensional weapons that could erase matter from existence, devices that could create black holes or manipulate gravity at a fundamental level. You have the capability to destroy stars, Morath asked. His mechanical arms had gone completely still. We have the theoretical capability, Chen corrected. We have not built such weapons. We may never build them, but we understand the science. Why develop such knowledge if you do not intend to use it? Chen's expression was unreadable. Because we are human, we cannot help but learn. Every time we discover something new, we ask ourselves what we could do with it. Usually the answer includes at least one way to use it as a weapon. It is how our minds work. She paused. We have learned to separate what we can do from what we should do. Our scientists develop technologies. Our ethicists decide whether those technologies should be used. Our governments enforce those decisions. It is not a perfect system. Sometimes mistakes are made, but it has kept us from destroying ourselves so far. The final assessment was a practical combat exercise. Human soldiers would face Covenant training robots in simulated combat. The robots were programmed to match any opponent, adjusting their difficulty to provide a fair test. Velrath expected the humans to perform well. He did not expect what he actually saw. The human soldiers moved like nothing he had ever witnessed. They did not fight individually. They fought as a unit, each soldier covering the others, communicating through hand signals and brief words. They adapted to every situation instantly, changing tactics mid-battle without discussion. The robots increased their difficulty. The humans adapted again. The robots tried new strategies. The humans countered them. No matter what the robots did, the humans found a way to respond. They are learning in real time, Morath observed. Each soldier is analyzing the robot's patterns and sharing information with the others. They are essentially functioning as a single organism with multiple bodies. That is called squad tactics. The scarred human, whose name Velrath had learned was Commander David Oyalaran, said from beside him. We have been perfecting it for thousands of years. Each soldier is an individual, but in combat, we become something more, something connected. Your soldiers trust each other absolutely, Velrath noted. They have to? In combat, there is no time for doubt. You trust your squad members with your life, or you die. It is that simple. The combat exercise ended with the humans victorious. The training robots had been pushed to their maximum difficulty level and still lost. The human soldiers were battered and exhausted, but they were alive and functional. The assessment was complete. Velrath stood in the observation room as Morath compiled the final report. The chief scientist's mechanical arms moved slowly, as if he did not want to finish. "What is the threat rating?" Threx demanded. Morath was silent for a long moment. "Class 12. The room went cold. "The scale only goes to 10, Threx said. "I am aware. The humans exceed our maximum classification. Their physical resilience, psychological stability, adaptive capabilities, and technological potential all surpass our highest parameters. I had to create new categories to accurately represent their threat level." He turned to face the Admiral. "Humanity is the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They are not the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest, but they are the most adaptable, the most persistent, the most creative in finding new ways to survive and new ways to kill." He paused. "And everything we have seen, they have been holding back." Director Chen admitted as much. "There are weapons they will not show us, capabilities they will not demonstrate. What we have observed is what humanity is willing to reveal. Their true potential is unknown." Admiral Threx's massive form was trembling. With rage or fear, Velrath could not tell. "What do we do?" the Admiral asked. Morath's optical sensors dimmed slightly. In a Kethmari, it would have been a sign of exhaustion. "I do not know. If we attack them, we face a species that has won 15,000 wars. If we leave them alone, they will continue to advance, becoming more dangerous with each generation. If we try to befriend them, we must trust that they are sincere about wanting peace." He looked at his data one more time. "There is one more thing. During the psychological assessments, we asked the human subjects what they feared most. Their answers were consistent across all individuals." "What did they say?" Velrath asked. "They said they feared themselves. They feared what they might become if they stopped trying to be good. They feared the monster that lives inside every human, waiting for permission to emerge." Morath's mechanical arms went still. "They are not asking us to trust them. They are asking us to help them stay human. They want allies, friends, reasons to remain civilized. Without those things, they are afraid of what they might do." The room was silent. Outside, the dying star cast red light across the validation array. In the distance, 3 human ships waited patiently for the results of their assessment. Velrath thought about everything he had seen: the endurance, the resilience, the capacity for violence held in check by nothing but willpower and choice. Humanity was terrifying, but not because they were monsters. They were terrifying because they knew exactly what they were, and they were trying so hard to be something better. The question was whether the galaxy would help them succeed or push them toward the darkness they feared. Velrath hoped the Council would choose wisely, because if they did not, he had seen what humans could do when they decided to stop being good, and he never wanted to see it again. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Class 12, a threat level that did not exist until humans made it necessary. Within hours of the assessment results being released, panic began. Ambassador Velrath watched the chaos unfold from his office on Nexus Prime. Reports flooded in from every corner of Covenant space. Stock markets were crashing. Military forces were mobilizing. Governments that had been stable for millennia were suddenly facing civil unrest as their populations demanded answers. The Council of 12 had fractured completely. Admiral Threx led the faction demanding immediate military action. They wanted to strike humanity before it could grow stronger. They argued that waiting would only give humans more time to prepare. Better to face them now, when they were still relatively weak, than later, when they might be unstoppable. High Priestess Yenna led the opposing faction. They argued that attacking humanity would be suicide. The humans had made it clear that they were willing to share their most dangerous technologies with their friends. If the Covenant attacked, it would prove to every human that the galaxy was their enemy. The war that followed would devastate both sides. The observer said nothing. The ancient being simply watched, as always. Meanwhile, the human delegation remained on Nexus Prime. They attended diplomatic functions. They made polite conversation with anyone willing to speak with them. They acted as if nothing unusual was happening. This frightened everyone more than anything else. Velrath received a message from Director Chen on the 5th day of the crisis. She requested a private meeting. Against the advice of his security staff, he agreed. They met in a garden in the lower levels of the diplomatic quarter. It was designed to soothe, filled with plants from 100 worlds. Water flowed through artificial streams. Birds from various planets sang in the artificial trees. Chen was already there when Velrath arrived. She was sitting on a stone bench, looking up at the simulated sky. She seemed smaller here, away from the grand halls and formal settings, almost fragile. "Thank you for coming, Ambassador," she said without turning around. "I know this was a risk for you." Velrath sat on a bench across from her. "You said you wanted to speak privately. What did you want to discuss?" Chen finally looked at him. Her eyes were tired. The calm confidence she had displayed in public was gone. In its place was something more honest, something vulnerable. "I wanted to explain why we revealed ourselves the way we did. The full truth, not the diplomatic version." "Please do." Chen took a deep breath. "Humanity is afraid. We have been afraid since we first looked up at the stars and wondered what might be looking back. For most of our history, we assumed the universe was hostile. We assumed that any alien species we encountered would try to destroy us. This assumption shaped everything we did." She stood and walked to the edge of a stream, looking down at the water. "When we developed interstellar travel, we found nothing. No aliens, no civilizations, just empty worlds and silent stars. For 300 years, we expanded alone. We built colonies. We strengthened our military. We prepared for a war that never came. And then you found us," Velrath said. "And then we found you. A galaxy full of life. Millions of species living in peace. Everything we had feared, everything we had prepared for, turned out to be wrong." Chen laughed softly. "You cannot imagine what that felt like. Our entire worldview, shattered in an instant." She turned to face him. "Some humans saw the Covenant as proof that peace was possible. They wanted to join you, to learn from you, to become part of something beautiful. But others saw it differently. They saw a galaxy full of potential victims, weak species who had forgotten how to fight, easy targets for a species that had never stopped fighting." "The factions you mentioned in the assembly," Velrath said. "Yes, the conquerors. They call themselves the true ascendancy now. They believe humanity's destiny is to rule the galaxy. They see our violent history not as a shame to overcome, but as proof of our superiority. We survived a death world. We won 15,000 wars. We split the atom and did not destroy ourselves. In their minds, this makes us the rightful masters of all we survey." Chen's voice hardened. "They are currently a minority, but they are growing. Every day they recruit more followers. Every day they become more powerful. And they are watching this crisis very carefully. If the Covenant attacks us, they will be proven right. Every human who wanted peace will have to admit that the galaxy sees us as enemies. And then the true ascendancy will have all the support they need." Velrath felt cold despite the warmth of the garden. "So this was all a gamble. You revealed yourselves hoping the Covenant would choose peace instead of war." "It was the only option that did not lead to disaster," Chen said. "If we had hidden ourselves, you would have found us eventually. And you would have found a divided humanity, some wanting peace and some wanting war. You would have seen us as an uncertain threat and acted accordingly." She sat back down on her bench. "By revealing ourselves openly, by sharing our history and our capabilities, we forced both sides to make a choice. The Covenant must decide whether to attack us or welcome us. Humanity must decide whether to trust the galaxy or conquer it. There is no middle ground anymore. No room for uncertainty. You are gambling with the fate of billions, Velrath said. I am gambling with the fate of trillions, Chen corrected, including every human who will ever be born. Do you think I do not feel that weight? Do you think I sleep well at night? She looked at him directly. I carry the future of my species on my shoulders, Ambassador. Every word I say, every decision I make, could determine whether humanity becomes a force for good in this galaxy or a plague that destroys everything it touches. Some days I can barely breathe under that pressure. Velrath studied her face. He had centuries of diplomatic experience. He had learned to read beings from hundreds of species. And right now, everything he saw told him that Chen was telling the truth. Why are you telling me this? He asked. I am just one ambassador among thousands. Because you asked me a question during our first meeting. You asked what humanity was hiding, what we were truly capable of. I could not answer you then, not in public, but I can answer you now. She leaned forward. What humanity is truly capable of is anything, absolutely anything. We have no natural limits. Our biology does not restrict us. Our psychology does not restrict us. Our culture does not restrict us. We can become saints or monsters, builders or destroyers. The only thing that determines which path we take is choice. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Do you know what the most frightening thing about humans is, Ambassador? It is not our weapons. It is not our resilience. It is not our capacity for violence. The most frightening thing is that every single human knows this about themselves. Every one of us carries a monster inside. Every one of us has looked into the darkness of our own soul and seen what we could become. She paused. We do not fear you. We do not fear the Covenant or its military or its technology. We fear ourselves. We fear what we might do if we decide that being good is not worth the effort. We fear the day when we stop trying to be civilized and let the monster out. Velrath did not know what to say. He had negotiated with tyrants and madmen. He had faced down threats from species that wanted to destroy everything he held dear. But he had never encountered anything like this. A species that was terrified of its own potential. A species that built its entire civilization around controlling the darkness within. You want our help, he finally said. Not our submission, not our fear. You want us to give you reasons to stay human. Chen nodded slowly. We need friends, Ambassador, not subjects. Friends who will remind us why peace matters. Friends who will give us something to protect instead of something to destroy. Friends who will help us be better than our nature. She stood up and walked to stand directly in front of him. I cannot promise that humanity will always choose wisely. We have failed before. We will fail again. But I can promise that we will try. Every day, every generation, we will try to be good. All we ask is that you give us the chance. Before Velrath could respond, his communication device activated. Emergency transmission. Priority 1. He answered it. The face of a council aide appeared, pale and frightened. Ambassador, you must return to the council chambers immediately. There has been an attack. What attack? Where? A human battle group has crossed into Covenant space. They have attacked a civilian station in the Veritas system. 3 million souls are at risk. Velrath felt his heart stop. He looked at Chen. Her face had gone white. The true ascendancy, she whispered. They move faster than we expected. Director Chen, you must come with me, Velrath said. The council will demand answers. I know. Chen's voice was flat, controlled, but her hands were shaking. I know. They walked through the gardens together, neither speaking. Velrath's mind was racing. Everything Chen had told him, all her explanations and reassurances, suddenly seemed hollow. The monsters had slipped their leash. Humans were attacking civilians. The nightmare scenario was unfolding. When they reached the council chambers, Chaos had already erupted. Admiral Threx was shouting orders to his fleet commanders. Yenna was attempting to coordinate evacuation efforts. The observer sat in silence, watching everything. On the main display, images from the Veritas system showed a civilian station, massive and graceful, designed to house millions. Human warships surrounded it. Weapons were powered, threats were being broadcast. They are demanding 30 systems and recognition of human supremacy, a tactical officer reported. They will destroy the station if their demands are not met. Admiral Threx turned to Chen with murder in his eyes. You said you wanted peace. You said we could trust you. Look at what your kind has done. Chen did not flinch. These are not my kind. These are the true ascendancy. They are enemies of everything I represent. They are enemies of humanity itself. How convenient. Your own species attacks us, and you simply disavow them. I do not disavow them, Admiral. I condemn them. Chen's voice was ice. And with your permission, I will deal with them. The chamber went silent. Deal with them? Velrath asked. How? Chen turned to face the entire council. Her earlier vulnerability was gone. In its place was something harder, something dangerous. You have seen what humanity can do. Our tests, our demonstrations, our weapons. But you have not seen what we do to our own kind when they threaten innocence. She looked at the display showing the besieged station. We have been policing our own monsters since before we discovered fire. Every society, every civilization, every nation humanity has ever built has included mechanisms for controlling our worst impulses. Laws, prisons, executions. We know better than anyone how dangerous we can be, and we know how to stop ourselves. What are you proposing? The observer asked. It was the first time the ancient being had spoken since the crisis began. Allow me to contact my government. Allow me to request intervention. If the true ascendancy wants to prove that humanity cannot be trusted, let them face the humans who have dedicated their lives to proving the opposite. Admiral Threx laughed bitterly. You want us to trust one group of humans to fight another group of humans? How do we know you will not simply join forces against us? You do not know, Chen admitted. You cannot know. All you can do is watch and see. She looked at the station again. 3 million lives hanging in the balance. Give me 1 hour. If I cannot resolve this situation, you may do whatever you think is necessary, but give me the chance to show you what humanity does to its own monsters. The council debated for exactly 3 minutes. They had no real choice. The nearest Covenant fleet was days away. The true ascendancy could destroy the station at any moment. Chen was offering the only possibility of a quick resolution. They gave her the hour. Velrath watched as Chen activated a communication channel using equipment far more advanced than anything she had shown during the assessments. She transmitted a single message, encrypted in ways the Covenant systems could not decipher. Then she waited. 47 minutes later, sensor alarms began screaming across the council chamber. Ships were appearing around the true ascendancy fleet, not Covenant ships, human ships. Dozens of them, materializing from empty space as if they had been hiding in the fabric of reality itself. Where did they come from? Threx demanded. We detected nothing. They were already there, Chen said quietly. They have been there for months, watching, waiting, just in case. On the display, the newcomers began to move. They did not attack immediately. They positioned themselves with surgical precision, cutting off every escape route, neutralizing every advantage the true ascendancy possessed. A transmission came through from the lead ship. A human male appeared on screen. His face was calm, almost bored, but his eyes were ancient, hard, the eyes of someone who had done terrible things and made peace with them long ago. True Ascendancy Vessels. This is Commander Marcus Webb of the Human Security Initiative. You have attacked innocent civilians. You have threatened the peace between humanity and the Covenant. You have shamed our species before the entire galaxy. He paused. You have one choice. Surrender unconditionally and face justice, or resist and face us. The True Ascendancy leader responded. He was a large man with fanatical eyes and a booming voice. You cannot stop us, Webb. We are the future of humanity. We are what humans were always meant to be. You are the ones who betrayed our nature. Webb's expression did not change. You have 10 seconds to decide. We will never surrender to traitors. We will show the galaxy what humanity can really do when it stops pretending to be civilized. Webb nodded slowly. So be it. The battle began. It lasted 11 minutes. Velrath watched in horrified fascination as the Human Security Initiative dismantled the True Ascendancy fleet. They did not simply defeat them. They took them apart piece by piece with a precision that suggested they knew exactly how the enemy ships were built and exactly how to disable them. Surgical strikes neutralize weapons. Boarding pods penetrated hulls at precise weak points. Within minutes, the True Ascendancy ships were crippled, their crews being subdued by teams that moved through corridors like shadows. When it was over, the station was untouched. 3 million civilians were safe. The True Ascendancy leader was in custody, along with his entire command staff. Webb's face appeared on the council display again. Director Chen, the situation is resolved. All hostile personnel are secured. The station is safe. We are returning to standing watch positions. Chen nodded. Thank you, Commander. Please ensure the prisoners are treated according to protocol. They will face justice on Earth. Understood. Webb's eyes moved slightly as if he were looking at something beyond the camera. The council is watching, I assume. They are. Webb's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then let me say this directly to them. What you have witnessed today is what humanity does to its own monsters. We do not tolerate those who threaten innocence. We do not excuse violence against the helpless. And we do not let our worst members define who we are. He paused. We are not asking for your trust. We are showing you what we do to earn it. Watch us, judge us by our actions, and decide for yourselves what kind of species we are. The transmission ended. The council chamber was completely silent. Admiral Threx looked as if someone had struck him across the face. High Priestess Yenna was crying, her tears glowing with inner light. Even the observer seemed moved, though it was impossible to read the ancient being's expression. Chen turned to face them all. This is what humanity can really do. Not just destruction, not just violence, control, discipline. The ability to turn our most dangerous capabilities against those who would misuse them. She looked at Velrath directly. We are not asking you to trust us blindly. We are asking you to give us a reason to keep being good. Help us be better than our nature, and we will spend every day proving that we are worth the chance. Velrath thought about everything he had seen, the power, the precision, the terrifying efficiency of humans hunting their own kind. And beneath it all, the desperate hope that someone would help them stay human. For the first time since this crisis began, he felt something other than fear. He felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had found its guardians. The Veritas system was quiet now. The damaged station had been stabilized. Repair ships were already on their way. 3 million civilians were safe, going about their lives as if nothing had happened. Most of them would never know how close they had come to dying. Ambassador Velrath stood on the observation deck of the Covenant diplomatic vessel, watching the human ships maintain their silent vigil around the system. They had not left after the battle. They simply returned to their watching positions and went still, like predators waiting patiently for their next hunt. Director Chen stood beside him. She had not slept since the crisis began. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, but she refused to rest until she had spoken with him one final time. "You asked me a question once," she said softly. "You asked what humanity was truly capable of. I think you finally have your answer." Velrath considered his response carefully. "I thought I knew what I would see. Violence, destruction, the monsters you warned us about. And what did you see instead?" "I saw something far more frightening." He turned to face her. "I saw control. I saw a species that has turned its most dangerous instincts into weapons against itself. I saw hunters who hunt their own kind to protect the innocent." Chen nodded slowly. "That is what scares you?" "Yes, because it means everything you told us was true. Humanity is capable of anything, and the only thing that determines what you do is choice. Your choice." He looked back out at the silent ships. The true ascendancy thought they were showing the galaxy what humanity could do without restraint. Instead, they showed us what happens when humanity decides to restrain its own. The monsters did not win today. The monster hunters did. Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Commander Webb lost his entire family to human violence. His wife, his children, his parents, all of them killed in a terrorist attack when he was young. He could have become a monster himself. He had every reason to embrace the darkness." She looked at him. "Instead, he dedicated his life to protecting others from what happened to him. He became the thing that monsters fear, not because he is good, not because he is kind, but because he chose to use his rage for protection instead of destruction. And if he had chosen differently, then he would be in custody right now, along with the true ascendancy leadership. We do not discriminate. Anyone who threatens innocence faces the same justice, regardless of their reasons." Velrath thought about this. A species that could produce both Webb and the true ascendancy leader from the same raw material, the same biology, the same history, the same potential. The only difference was choice. It was terrifying, and somehow it was also beautiful. "The council will meet tomorrow," he said. "They will decide humanity's fate. Or rather, they will decide how the Covenant responds to humanity. I know. I have been preparing my final statement. What will you say?" Chen smiled tiredly. "The truth, nothing more, nothing less." The council chamber was full when Chen took the speaking platform the next day. Every representative who could attend was present. This was the most important decision the Covenant would make in 10,000 years. No one wanted to miss it. Velrath sat in his usual position among the Kethmari delegation. He had spent the night thinking about everything he had witnessed since the humans first appeared. The revelations, the demonstrations, the fear, and finally the hope. He knew what he would recommend when his turn came to speak. He only hoped enough others felt the same way. Admiral Threx spoke first. His massive form seemed smaller somehow, diminished by what he had witnessed in the Veritas system. "I came to this chamber prepared to demand humanity's destruction," he began. "I believed they were a threat too great to be allowed to exist. I believed that their capacity for violence made them our enemies, regardless of what they claimed to want." He paused, his armored fists clenching and unclenching. "I was wrong. Not about their capacity for violence. That is real. What I was wrong about was what that capacity means." He looked at Chen. "Every species in this chamber has fought wars. We have all killed. We have all destroyed. The difference is that most of us stopped because we ran out of enemies or ran out of strength. We did not choose peace. We had peace forced upon us by circumstance." His voice dropped. "Humanity is different. They have never run out of strength. They have never been forced to stop fighting. Every moment of peace they have ever experienced has been a choice. They choose to be civilized every single day, despite having the power to do otherwise. He turned to address the full council. I have been a warrior for 400 years. I have faced enemies from across the galaxy, but I have never encountered anything like humans. They frighten me more than any species I have ever fought, and I believe we should welcome them as allies. A murmur ran through the chamber. Admiral Threx advocating for peace with the humans was unprecedented. Even those who shared his opinion had not expected him to be the one to voice it. High Priestess Yenna spoke next. Her pale form glowed with inner light as she addressed the assembly. I serve the celestial order, which teaches that all life is sacred. When I first heard of humanity's history, I was horrified. 15,000 wars, weapons capable of ending worlds. A species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times. She smiled softly. But I have learned something in these past weeks. The measure of a soul is not in the darkness it contains. It is in the light it chooses to show despite that darkness. Humanity is not defined by its capacity for violence. It is defined by its endless struggle to overcome that capacity. She gestured toward Chen. Director Chen told me something in private that I would like to share with this assembly. She said that every human carries a monster inside, that they spend their entire lives trying to keep that monster contained, that their laws, their ethics, their entire civilization exists to help them make the right choice every day. Her voice trembled slightly. That is not the description of monsters. That is the description of saints. Not beings who are naturally good, but beings who fight to be good despite every instinct telling them otherwise. That is a struggle, I understand. That is a struggle every species understands. She looked out at the assembly. I believe humanity deserves our compassion, not our fear. I believe they need our help to win their internal battle. And I believe that if we give them that help, they will become the greatest protectors this galaxy has ever known. More voices spoke. Some demanded caution. Others wanted stricter oversight. A few still called for military action, though their arguments seemed hollow after what had happened in the Veritas system. Then the observer rose. The ancient being rarely spoke. When the observer did speak, everyone listened. The chamber fell completely silent. I have watched civilizations rise and fall for longer than any of you can imagine, the observer began. I have seen species at their best and their worst. I have witnessed genocides and golden ages, and I have never in all my years encountered anything like humanity. The observer's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Most species evolve toward peace or destruction. They either learn to control their violent impulses or those impulses consume them. It is a natural process, as inevitable as the death of stars. The observer looked directly at Chen. Humanity has done neither. They have not overcome their violence. They have embraced it. They have made it part of themselves. But instead of letting it destroy them, they have learned to direct it, to control it, to use it as a tool rather than be used by it. The observer paused. This is unprecedented. It suggests possibilities that we have never considered. A species that could harness the destructive potential that destroys others. A species that could turn the darkness into a weapon for light. The ancient being's voice grew stronger. The galaxy has been at peace for 10,000 years. We have grown comfortable, safe. We have forgotten what it means to truly struggle for survival. But the universe is vast and old, and we are not alone in it. There are threats beyond our borders that we have never faced, dangers that would destroy everything we have built. The observer looked out at the assembly. I believe humanity was not a random discovery. I believe they were meant to be found. The galaxy needs protectors, warriors who have not forgotten how to fight, guardians who can face the darkness without becoming it. The observer sat back down. Humanity is not our enemy. They are our salvation, if we are wise enough to see it. The vote was held that evening. The result was not unanimous. Nothing involving billions of lives ever is. But the majority was clear. Humanity would be granted provisional membership in the Covenant of United Species. They would not be treated as subordinates or threats. They would be treated as partners, equals, friends. The announcement was made across all Covenant channels. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what would happen next. In the diplomatic quarter of Nexus Prime, Director Chen received the news in her temporary quarters. She read the official declaration 3 times before allowing herself to believe it was real. Then she sat down and cried. Commander Oyalaran found her like that an hour later. He sat beside her without speaking, simply offering his presence as comfort. "We did it," Chen finally said. "We actually did it." "We got our chance," Oyalaran corrected. "What we do with that chance is still up to us." Chen laughed through her tears. Always the optimist. "Someone has to be." He smiled slightly. "The true ascendancy is not going to disappear because we won one battle. There will be more challenges, more tests, more chances for humanity to fail." "I know," Chen wiped her eyes. "But for the first time in my life, I believe we might succeed. We have friends now, real friends, a galaxy full of species who see us not as monsters, but as people. Damaged, dangerous people, but people nonetheless." She looked out the window at the alien city spread before her. "That matters more than any weapon we could ever build. It gives us something to protect, something worth being good for." Ambassador Velrath found her there several hours later. The sky had darkened, and the lights of Nexus Prime glittered like stars against the blackness. "Director Chen," he said, "I wanted to congratulate you personally, and to thank you." Chen turned to face him. Her eyes were still red from crying, but she was smiling. "Thank me? For what?" "For trusting us, for believing that we could see past our fear and recognize what humanity truly is. Many would have assumed we were too blind or too cowardly to make the right choice. I never doubted you, Ambassador. I doubted us. Humanity. Whether we could convince you that we were worth saving." Velrath stepped closer. "You did not need to convince us. You showed us. With your honesty, your vulnerability, your willingness to face your own darkness in front of strangers." He reached out and touched her hand, a gesture of connection used by his people. "My final report to the Council contains one recommendation above all others. In the event of existential threat to the Covenant, humanity should be contacted first, not as soldiers for hire, not as weapons to be pointed at our enemies, as protectors, guardians, friends who will fight for us because they have chosen to, not because they must." Chen's smile widened. "That is quite an honor. It is quite a responsibility." Velrath's voice grew serious. "There will be those who expect humanity to solve all our problems, to face every danger, to be our shield against the darkness. They will forget that you are people too, with your own struggles and limitations." "We are used to carrying burdens," Chen said. "It is what we were built for." "Perhaps, but you do not have to carry them alone anymore." He squeezed her hand gently. "That is what friendship means. Sharing the weight, trusting others to help when you stumble, allowing yourself to be supported as well as supporting." Chen looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Thank you, Ambassador, for seeing us, for understanding. Thank you, Director, for giving us the chance to understand." 6 months later, the formal ceremony was held. Humanity was officially welcomed into the Covenant of United Species. The Grand Assembly Hall was filled to capacity. Representatives from every member species watched as Director Chen signed the historic documents. The celebrations lasted for weeks. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens met for the first time. There were misunderstandings. There were conflicts. There were moments when it seemed like the whole experiment might fail. But there were also moments of connection, of understanding, of friendship forming between beings who had never imagined finding common ground. Velreth watched it all with a mixture of hope and caution. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. Humanity was still dangerous, still capable of the violence that had defined their history. The true ascendancy was not destroyed, only weakened. Other challenges would arise. But he also knew something else now, something that had been missing from his understanding of the universe. Monsters were real. They existed in every species, in every heart, in the darkness of every soul. The galaxy was not as safe as he had believed. But there were also monster hunters, beings who had looked into their own darkness and chosen to fight it. Beings who used their capacity for violence to protect the innocent instead of preying on them. Humanity was both, and somehow, impossibly, they had chosen to be guardians rather than destroyers. In his final report, Velrath wrote words that would be studied for generations to come. We spent millennia fearing what lurked in the dark between stars. We were right to fear. But we were wrong about what we would find. Humans are not the monsters we imagine. They are far worse and far better. They are the monsters who chose to guard the light. He paused, considering his next words carefully. May the cosmos have mercy on any who threaten what humanity has chosen to protect. Because humans will not. He looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, human ships kept their silent vigil, watching, waiting, ready to face whatever threats might come. The galaxy had found its protectors, and for the first time in 10,000 years, Velreth truly believed that the future was bright. Not because danger had disappeared, it never would, but because there were now beings who would stand against that danger, who would fight for peace with all the ferocity that had once been reserved for war. Humanity had been given a chance to prove themselves, and they would spend every generation, every lifetime, every breath proving they were worth it. That was the promise they had made. That was the choice they made every day, and that made all the difference.
Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Sentinel station, watching the massive alien vessel approach Earth. Her hands gripped the railing so hard her knuckles turned white. After 200 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally found proof they were not alone. Now, looking at the enormous ship that dwarfed their largest space stations, Sarah wondered if finding them was a mistake. The ship was beautiful in a terrible way. It stretched for miles, covered in silver metal that seemed to glow with its own light. Thousands of smaller ships flew around it like birds circling a whale. The Valdros Imperium had arrived, and they had come in force. Admiral, the Valdros delegation is ready to board, Lieutenant Marcus Hayes said behind her. His voice shook slightly. The young man had every right to be nervous. This was the most important moment in human history. Sarah turned away from the window and straightened her uniform. Let's go meet our visitors. The docking bay was filled with Earth's best and brightest. Scientists, diplomats, military leaders, and representatives from every major nation stood in careful formation. They had argued for weeks about who would speak first, what to say, how to stand. In the end, they had settled on Secretary General Amara Okonkwo as the voice of humanity. The airlock hissed open. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The Valdros were humanoid, but only barely. They stood 8 feet tall with skin that shimmered between blue and purple. 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern dominated their faces. They wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid metal, flowing and changing color with each movement. The leader wore a crown of white crystal that floated above his head without any visible support. I am Emperor Thexkar IX, divine ruler of the Valdros Imperium, Lord of 2,000 worlds, keeper of the eternal flame. His voice came from a translator device that made it sound like thunder rolling across mountains. You are the humans of Earth. It was not a question. Secretary General Okonkwo stepped forward and bowed slightly. Your Imperial Majesty, on behalf of humanity, welcome to Earth. We are honored by your presence. We have prepared, yes. The Emperor waved a long-fingered hand dismissively. You have prepared gifts and speeches. You wish to show us what you have accomplished. Proceed. The words were polite, but the tone made Sarah's teeth clench. The Emperor sounded like a parent humoring a child who wanted to show off a crayon drawing. Over the next 3 hours, Earth's representatives presented everything they could think of. Dr. Robert Martinez explained humanity's scientific achievements. Professor Lin Wei spoke about human art, music, and literature. General Thomas Adeyemi demonstrated humanity's space exploration efforts. They showed the Emperor images of Earth's cities, its diversity, its history from cave paintings to space stations. Emperor Thexakar watched it all with what could only be described as mild amusement. His 4 eyes never widened in surprise or interest. He occasionally nodded like a teacher acknowledging a student's correct but unremarkable answer. When the presentations finished, Secretary General Okonkwo smiled hopefully. Your Majesty, we hope this demonstrates that humanity is ready to join the galactic community as equals. We have much to offer and much to learn. The Emperor's mouth opened, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp and too numerous. It took Sarah a moment to realize he was smiling. Equals, he repeated, and then he laughed. It was not a cruel laugh, which somehow made it worse. It was the laugh of an adult who finds a child's innocent statement adorable. Oh, little humans, you truly do not understand. He gestured, and one of his attendants brought forward a flat device. It glowed with soft blue light and displayed images that moved and changed. This is a learning tablet we give to Valdros children at the age of 3 solar cycles. It contains the basic fundamentals of mathematics, physics, engineering, and biology. He held it out toward Secretary General Okonkwo. I gift this to your species. Study it well. Perhaps in a few thousand years you will begin to approach the level of civilization. The silence in the docking bay was absolute. Sarah felt hot anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to remain still. Your Majesty, Okonkwo said carefully, we do not understand. Are you saying? I am saying that you are children, Secretary General. Impressive children, yes. You have reached space travel using primitive fusion drives in only 10,000 years of civilization. That is remarkable for such a young species. The Emperor's tone was genuinely complimentary, which made his next words cut deeper. But the Valdros Imperium has stood for 50,000 of your years. We have uplifted 47 species from primitive states to civilization. We have seen thousands of worlds and billions of lives. You are the youngest children we have ever encountered. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, unable to contain himself. With respect, Your Majesty, humanity has achieved fusion power. We achieved that 60,000 years ago. Artificial intelligence, 42,000 years ago. Your proudest achievement is our ancient history. The Emperor was not angry, just stating facts. You have potential, humans. Great potential. But you are not ready to stand beside the established species of the galaxy. Then what are you proposing? General Adeyemi asked, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The Valdros Imperium extends an offer to humanity. We will take Earth and all human colonies under our protection. You will become a protectorate species. We will guide you, teach you, and protect you from the dangers of the galaxy that you are not yet equipped to face. And in return? Sarah heard herself asking. The Emperor's 4 eyes focused on her. In return, you will follow Imperium law. You will contribute resources to the greater good. You will not build military vessels or engage in independent diplomacy with other species. You will learn and grow under our guidance until such time as you are deemed ready for full membership in the Imperium. How long would that take? Okonkwo asked quietly. 3 to 5,000 years, typically. Though given your enthusiasm, perhaps only 2,000 for humanity. The number hit like a physical blow. 2,000 years of being treated as children. 2,000 years of submission. And if we refuse? General Adeyemi's hand had moved unconsciously toward where his sidearm would normally be. For the first time, the Emperor's expression hardened. Then you will be classified as an unguided species. The Imperium cannot allow dangerous children to play with weapons they do not understand. We would be forced to implement corrective measures. He paused. I have seen the records of your world wars, General. Millions dead from weapons you barely understood. Nuclear fire used against your own kind. You are a danger to yourselves. We cannot allow you to become a danger to others. So we submit or you attack us, Sarah said flatly. We prefer to think of it as accept guidance or be guided. The Emperor's smile returned. But yes, Admiral Chen, that is the essence of it. The Imperium has maintained peace and order for 50,000 years. We did not achieve that by allowing chaos to flourish. Secretary General Okonkwo looked at the other human leaders. Sarah saw the same expression on every face, rage, humiliation, and helplessness. What could they do? The Sentinel Station's sensors had counted over 3,000 Valdros warships in orbit around Earth. Each one was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. "Your Majesty," Okonkwo said finally, her voice steady despite the tremor Sarah knew she must be feeling. "Humanity accepts your generous offer of protection." The words tasted like ash in Sarah's mouth. She saw General Adeyemi's jaw clench. Dr. Martinez looked like he might be sick. "Excellent." The Emperor clapped his hands together. "You have made a wise choice. Tomorrow we will begin the integration process. Valdros advisors will be assigned to each of your worlds. We will establish resource collection schedules and educational programs. Do not worry, little humans. Under our guidance you will flourish." He turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. It is customary for Protectorate species to show respect to the Imperium. When addressing Valdros officials, it is appropriate to bow. Like this." He demonstrated a deep bow, his body folding almost in half. The silence stretched. Sarah felt every eye in the room turn toward the human leaders. Secretary General Okonkwo's hand shook as she bowed. One by one, every human in the docking bay bowed to the Emperor. Sarah Chen bowed last. As she did, she made a promise to herself. This humiliation would not stand forever. Humanity had not climbed from caves to stars by accepting defeat. They had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed lesser species. The Valdros thought humanity was young and naive. They thought 2,000 years of submission was acceptable. They thought they could pat humanity on the head and expect gratitude. They were about to learn that Earth's children had teeth. As the Emperor and his delegation left the station, Sarah caught General Adeyemi's eye. He gave her the smallest nod. Dr. Martinez's expression had shifted from despair to cold calculation. Even Secretary General Okonkwo's shoulders were set with determination rather than defeat. The Valdros had won this day. They had humiliated humanity before they had even truly met them. They had reduced Earth's proudest achievements to children's playthings. But they had also made a critical mistake. They had assumed that because humanity was young, they would stay submissive. They had forgotten that young species still remembered how to fight for survival. They had forgotten that the most dangerous enemy is not the one who accepts defeat gracefully. Sarah Chen returned to the observation window and watched the Valdros fleet surrounding her world. 2,000 years, the Emperor had said. 2,000 years of bowing and submission. She smiled coldly at her reflection in the glass. "We'll see about that." Behind her, Lieutenant Hayes approached nervously. "Admiral, what do we do now?" Sarah turned to face him. Around them, the other human leaders were gathering, their faces grim but determined. "Now," Sarah said quietly. "Now we bow, we smile. We accept their gifts and their guidance," her voice hardened, "and we prepare. Because one day that Emperor is going to regret he ever humiliated Earth." The others nodded in agreement. The Valdros Imperium had just made humanity an offer they couldn't refuse, but they had also just made the worst enemy they could imagine. They had united every human under one purpose: prove them wrong. The age of submission had begun, but it would not last forever. Of that Sarah Chen was absolutely certain. 8 years had passed since the Emperor's arrival, and Admiral Sarah Chen sat in a small apartment on Mars Colony, instead of a military command center. The Valdros called it early retirement. She called it being put in a cage where she couldn't cause trouble. The view from her window showed the red Martian landscape, dotted with domes and structures that humanity had built with their own hands. But now, towering above them all was a massive Valdros administrative center, its silver spires making Earth's achievements look small and insignificant. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. Sarah checked the security camera, then disabled 3 different monitoring systems she knew the Valdros had installed. The device that did it was human-made, cobbled together from spare parts. The Valdros never imagined that the primitive humans would figure out their surveillance technology so quickly. Dr. Marcus Webb slipped inside, carrying a bag that supposedly contained groceries. Sarah had known Marcus for 15 years, ever since he had studied alien context scenarios that everyone thought were fantasy. Now he was the leading expert on the Valdros, though his official job was teaching basic engineering to human students under Valdros supervision. "Tell me something good." "Marcus," Sarah said, pouring them both coffee. Real coffee was getting rare since the Valdros had decided Earth's coffee beans would be better used as a luxury export to other Imperium worlds. Marcus pulled out a data pad from his bag and set it on the table. I've been studying the Valdros for 8 years now. Every interaction, every piece of technology they've let us see, every history lesson they've taught us. He paused. Sarah, they're stagnant. What do you mean? The Valdros haven't innovated in 10,000 years. Maybe longer. Everything they use, from their ships to their weapons to their computers, is just refined versions of technology they invented ages ago. They're not creating anything new. They're just making old things slightly better. Sarah leaned forward. Are you sure? Completely. I've compared records from their historical databases. Their newest warship design is 8,000 years old. They've made it more efficient, yes, but the core design hasn't changed. Their AI systems? 42,000 years old. They're running the galaxy on ancient technology that they've just polished to perfection. But they're still stronger than us, Sarah said. Yes, because they have numbers and time. They've had thousands of years to build their fleets and perfect their systems. But Sarah, they're not better at innovation than us. They're worse. They've forgotten how to truly create because they haven't had to for thousands of years. Sarah felt a spark of hope for the first time in years. What about their military tactics? Marcus smiled. That's even better. Or worse, from their perspective. The Valdros fight the same way they've fought for 50,000 years. Overwhelming numbers, superior technology, formal fleet battles. They line up their ships and fire until the enemy surrenders. It works because they've always had the bigger, better fleet. They've never had to adapt, Sarah said slowly, understanding dawning. Exactly. They conquered most of their empire tens of thousands of years ago. Since then, they've only fought minor rebellions that they crushed with sheer force. They don't know guerrilla warfare. They don't understand asymmetric combat. They've never faced an enemy that refuses to fight fair. Before Sarah could respond, another knock came at the door. This time it was Captain James Morrison, still wearing his Earth Defense Force uniform even though the EDF technically no longer existed. The Valdros had disbanded Earth's military within the first year, claiming humanity didn't need weapons under the Imperium's protection. James looked exhausted. He had just returned from the Kryn War, a conflict on the far edge of the galaxy where the Valdros were fighting an enemy species called the Kryn Horde. How bad? Sarah asked, handing him coffee. James sat down heavily. 80,000 humans dead. 80,000, Sarah. We were labeled auxiliary expendables and sent in first every single battle. The Valdros waited behind us, let us take the casualties, then swept in with their superior firepower to claim the victory. And Valdros casualties? Marcus asked quietly. 200. Total. For the entire war. James's hands shook with rage. They sent humans to die so they wouldn't risk their own people. We're not soldiers to them. We're shields. Expendable shields. Sarah felt cold fury settle in her chest. Tell me about the Kryn. They're tough. Stronger than humans physically. But their technology is about equal to ours. The Valdros beat them with numbers and better shields. But Sarah, the Kryn never surrendered. Even when they knew they would lose, they kept fighting. The Valdros had to kill almost every single Kryn soldier because they refused to give up. How did the Valdros react to that? Marcus asked. They were disturbed. I heard Valdros commanders saying the Kryn were unreasonably stubborn and illogically persistent. They couldn't understand why the Kryn didn't surrender when defeat was obvious. James smiled grimly, reminded me of humanity. Sarah stood and walked to her window. 8 years of humiliation. 8 years of bowing to Valdros administrators. 8 years of watching humanity's resources shipped off to other worlds while humans scraped by with less and less. But it wasn't just pride that hurt. Last year, the Valdros had decided that New Perth, a thriving human colony of 30,000 people, was in a location they wanted for a Valdros research station. They had given the colonists 3 days to evacuate, then demolished everything humans had built there. 30,000 people lost their homes so the Valdros could have slightly better real estate. When the New Perth colonists had protested, Valdros peacekeepers had arrested the leaders for disturbing Imperium harmony. Those leaders were still in prison somewhere. And now 80,000 human soldiers were dead. Thrown away like garbage. Marcus, how far has your network spread? Sarah asked. 40 human worlds. We have contacts on every major colony and most of the minor ones. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, politicians. People who are tired of bowing. James, how many of our people came back from the Kryn War angry? All of them. Every single survivor wants payback. They saw their friends die for nothing. They saw the Valdros laugh about acceptable losses while humans bled. Sarah turned to face them. Then it's time. Start reaching out to the network. Tell them to be ready. We're going to need weapons, ships, supplies, and most importantly, people who are willing to fight. Sarah, we can't beat them in a straight fight, Marcus warned. Their fleet is 100 times larger than anything we could build. Then we don't fight straight. We fight dirty. We fight smart. We fight the way humans have always fought when our backs are against the wall. Sarah's voice was hard as steel. The Valdros think we're children who need guidance. They're about to learn that Earth's children bite. Over the next months, messages spread across human space. Encrypted, hidden, and passed person to person, the word went out. Be ready, be patient. The time would come. But the time came sooner than expected, and from a direction no one anticipated. New Perth's relocated colonists had been moved to a mining world called New Australia. They obeyed Valdros rules. They worked hard. They caused no trouble, but they never forgot what had been taken from them. When the Valdros raised the resource tax from 40% to 55%, claiming the Imperium needed more supplies for another war, New Australia's population had enough. 10,000 people marched peacefully to the Valdros Administrative Center. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't make threats. They simply demanded to be heard. The Valdros administrator, a commander named Zelthor, looked at the crowd of humans from his balcony. He saw their signs, heard their chants, and felt something the Valdros rarely experienced: annoyance at having their authority questioned. This is an illegal gathering, Zelthor announced through speakers. Disperse immediately or face consequences. The crowd didn't disperse. They had lost their homes once. They had buried friends in the Kryn War. They had worked for 8 years under Valdros rule and watched their dignity stripped away piece by piece. They were done being pushed. We demand representation, someone shouted. We demand fair treatment, another voice called. The chant spread through the crowd. Fair treatment. Fair treatment. Fair treatment. Zelthor made a decision that would change everything. He called in Valdros peacekeepers and ordered them to disperse the crowd by force. The peacekeepers were soldiers, not riot police. They didn't have non-lethal weapons. They had plasma rifles designed to kill armored soldiers. When the crowd refused to move, the peacekeepers opened fire. 15,000 humans died in 30 minutes. Men, women, and children cut down by plasma fire. The Valdros killed them efficiently, methodically, and without hesitation. When Emperor Thexkar heard about the incident, he made a public statement that was broadcast across human space. The events at New Australia were regrettable but necessary, he said, his 4 eyes showing no emotion. Protectorate species must understand that Imperium law is absolute. Disobedience cannot be tolerated. These humans chose to ignore warnings and suffered the consequences of their choice. Let this be a lesson to all species under our protection. Order must be maintained. The message was clear: obey or die. But the Emperor had miscalculated. He thought fear would make humans obedient. He thought one brutal lesson would keep humanity in line for another 1,000 years. Instead, he had just shown every human in the galaxy exactly what Valdros protection meant. Sarah Chen watched the footage of New Australia's massacre in her apartment. Beside her, Marcus and James watched in silence. Around human space, billions of people watched the same footage and felt the same cold rage. How many do we have? Sarah asked quietly. James checked his datapad. At last count, 40,000 trained soldiers from the Kryn War. Another 100,000 with combat experience from Earth's old conflicts. 300,000 civilians with useful skills who volunteered. But Sarah, we don't have ships. We don't have weapons that can match theirs. Then we make them. We steal them. We improvise them. Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with fury. The Valdros think one massacre will teach us to obey. They're wrong. They just taught us that we have nothing left to lose. Marcus pulled up star charts showing human colonies. If we do this, there's no going back. The Valdros will come for us with everything they have. They're already killing us, James said flatly. At least this way we die fighting. Sarah stood and looked at both of them. New Australia's people died begging for basic dignity. They died unarmed, asking only to be heard. I will not let their deaths be meaningless. She activated her encrypted communication system. Across 40 human worlds, resistance leaders received the same message. Operation Prometheus is active.
Strike everything.
Strike everywhere. Make them bleed. The Valdros Imperium had ruled for 50,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and subjugated dozens of species. They had never, in all their history, faced a species that fought back after accepting protectorate status. They were about to learn that humanity was different. Humans didn't forget humiliation. They didn't forgive injustice. And they never ever stopped fighting. The war had begun. The attack came at midnight, coordinated across 12 human worlds simultaneously. The Valdros never saw it coming. On Mars, Captain James Morrison led a team of 200 former soldiers against the Valdros Administrative Center. They didn't have plasma rifles or energy shields. They had human weapons cobbled together from mining equipment and salvaged tech, explosives made from fertilizer, guns modified to fire armor-piercing rounds, drones equipped with cameras and crude missiles. "Remember," James said into his comm as his team moved through the darkness, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to hurt them." The Valdros peacekeepers guarding the center numbered 50 soldiers with advanced weapons and armor. By all military logic, they should have easily defeated the human attackers, but James didn't attack head-on. His teams hit from 6 different directions at once, using the dark Martian terrain for cover. They fired from buildings, from underground tunnels, from positions the Valdros sensors couldn't easily detect. When the Valdros concentrated fire on one position, that team retreated while another attacked from a different angle. The battle lasted 4 hours. When the sun rose, the Valdros Administrative Center was burning. 30 Valdros soldiers were dead. The remaining 20 had barricaded themselves inside, calling desperately for reinforcements. James's team had lost 80 people. But they had proven something crucial. Valdros soldiers could die. Across the galaxy, similar attacks succeeded and failed in equal measure. Some human teams managed to destroy Valdros installations and escape. Others were wiped out completely. But every single attack sent the same message. Humans were fighting back. The Valdros were shocked. In 50,000 years of Imperium history, no protectorate species had ever rebelled. Protectorate status was supposed to be peaceful. Subject species were supposed to be grateful for Valdros guidance. Commander Zelthor, the same Valdros who had ordered the New Australia massacre, was stationed on Europa when the human attacks began. He immediately called for military reinforcements and sent a message to Emperor Thexkar. "Your Majesty, the humans are in rebellion. They attack our installations with primitive weapons and terrorist tactics. Request authorization to implement pacification protocols." The Emperor's response came within hours. "Authorization granted. Crush this rebellion immediately. Make an example of the humans." Zelthor smiled. Pacification protocols meant total war. It meant burning human cities until the survivors begged for mercy. It meant showing the entire galaxy what happened when you defied the Imperium. He deployed 3 full battle fleets to human space, 1,500 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet from orbit. It was, by Valdros standards, overwhelming force against an enemy with no space fleet. The first battle fleet arrived at Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Titan was home to 5 million humans and served as a major refueling station for ships traveling through the outer solar system. Admiral Sarah Chen was there waiting. "All ships. This is Chen, remember the plan. We're not trying to win. We're trying to hurt them." The human defense fleet at Titan consisted of 43 ships. Most were converted cargo vessels and mining ships. Only 12 were actual military craft, left over from humanity's disbanded navy. Against 200 Valdros warships, it should have been a massacre lasting minutes. Sarah gave the order. "All ships full burn. Ramming speed." The Valdros fleet commander, Admiral Crethor, watched the human ships accelerate toward his formation with confusion. Were they surrendering? Fleeing? Neither made sense given their trajectory. Then he understood, but too late. The human ships weren't trying to fight. They were missiles. Each one was loaded with volatile fuel and rigged to explode on impact. And each one had a crew of volunteers who knew they weren't coming home. "Evasive action," Crethor ordered. But Valdros warships were built for power, not maneuverability. The first human ship slammed into a Valdros cruiser at a significant fraction of light speed. The explosion was like a small star being born. It vaporized both ships instantly and damaged 3 others nearby. Then the second ship hit. And the third? And the fourth? 43 human ships died in suicide runs. They took 18 Valdros warships with them and damaged 30 more. In one battle, Humanity had destroyed more Valdros military vessels than had been lost in the previous 1,000 years of Imperium warfare. Admiral Krathor stared at his damage reports in disbelief. His ships had been designed to fight other ships in formation, trading fire at long range. They had never been designed to fight an enemy that simply crashed into them like ancient battering rams. "What kind of species does this?" his second officer asked in shock. "A desperate one," Krathor answered. But he was wrong. Humanity wasn't desperate. They were determined. There was a difference. The Valdros continued their assault, but they were now cautious. They knew humans would sacrifice themselves without hesitation. It made the Valdros, who had not faced existential war in thousands of years, uncomfortable. The next major battle happened at New Shanghai on Europa. The Valdros sent 20,000 peacekeepers to retake the city from human resistance forces. The humans had only 2,000 fighters. The Valdros commander, General Zelmar, had studied human military history during the voyage. He had read about human wars and their tactics. He thought he understood. He was wrong. New Shanghai was a city of tunnels and enclosed habitats beneath Europa's ice. The Valdros advanced in formation, using their superior armor and weapons to push through the outer defenses. They expected the humans to fall back, consolidate, and eventually surrender when their position became hopeless. Instead, the humans made every meter a nightmare. The tunnels were rigged with explosives that brought down entire sections on Valdros soldiers. Hidden firing positions let humans shoot and retreat before return fire could hit them. The lighting systems failed, plunging sections into darkness that favored humans with their better close combat skills. Chemical weapons made from industrial supplies filled corridors with choking gas. The Valdros had plasma rifles and energy shields, but they couldn't use heavy weapons without destroying the tunnels they needed to advance through. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons, not the crude bullets and explosives humans used. Their armor was advanced, but it didn't cover everything, and humans learned quickly where the weak points were. General Zelmar watched his casualty reports climb with growing horror. 100 dead, 300, 1,000, 5,000. "They're everywhere and nowhere," one of his officers reported. "We clear a section and they attack from behind us. We pursue them, and they vanish into tunnels we didn't know existed. Sir, they know this terrain better than we do." "Then bring down the entire city," Zelmar ordered. "Collapse the tunnels. Seal them in." But doing so meant losing the infrastructure the Valdros had come to secure. It meant admitting that 20,000 Valdros soldiers couldn't defeat 2,000 humans in urban combat. The siege lasted 6 weeks. By the end, 12,000 Valdros soldiers were dead or wounded. They had managed to secure only 1/3 of New Shanghai, and that only because the human defenders chose to retreat rather than be trapped. When General Zelmar finally reported to Emperor Thexkar, he had to admit something no Valdros commander had said in 10,000 years. "Your Majesty, we cannot achieve victory without unacceptable casualties." The Emperor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Unacceptable? General, you command the finest military in the galaxy. The humans have no fleet, no advanced weapons, no training in modern warfare. How are they defeating you?" "They're not fighting by our rules, Your Majesty. They use terrorism, suicide attacks, and guerrilla warfare. They hide among civilians. They booby-trap everything. They refuse to surrender even when defeat is certain. Our soldiers are trained for honorable combat between military forces. The humans fight like animals." Emperor Thexkar felt something he had rarely experienced in his long life. Concern. Not fear, not yet, but concern that perhaps humanity was more dangerous than he had anticipated. "Redirect 3 more battle fleets to human space," he ordered. "And General? Next time I do not want excuses. I want results." But even as the Emperor gave his orders, more attacks were happening across human worlds. The Valdros were learning that occupying human territory was like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder they squeezed, the more resistance slipped through their fingers. On Ganymede, a Valdros supply depot was destroyed by a team of engineers who had been pretending to repair Valdros equipment for years, while actually learning how it worked. They knew exactly which systems to sabotage for maximum damage. On Ceres, human miners used their knowledge of the asteroid's tunnels to ambush Valdros patrols repeatedly. The Valdros would send 20 soldiers into the mines. 10 would come back. Then 5, then none. On Luna, Earth's moon, resistance fighters broadcast constant propaganda that the Valdros couldn't block. They showed footage of New Australia's massacre. They shared stories of human soldiers dying in the Kryn War while Valdros commanders watched safely from the rear. They reminded every human why they were fighting. Dr. Marcus Webb coordinated much of the intelligence gathering. He had spent 8 years studying Valdros systems, and now that knowledge was weaponized. He identified supply routes, communication relays, and weak points in Valdros defenses. They're predictable, Marcus told Sarah during a planning session. 50,000 years of the same tactics make them rigid. They can't adapt quickly. Every time we change our approach, it takes them weeks to respond. Sarah looked at the star map showing human space. Red markers showed where fighting was happening. There were dozens of them now, scattered across 12 worlds. We're hurting them, James said. But Sarah, we're losing people fast. At this rate, we'll run out of fighters before they run out of soldiers. Then we need to change the equation, Sarah replied. We need to make this cost them more than just soldiers. We need to make the Emperor himself feel the pain. How do we do that? Marcus asked. Sarah smiled coldly. By making him come to us. By making this personal. The Emperor humiliated us publicly. We need to return the favor. She activated the communication system and sent out a new message, not encrypted this time. She wanted the Valdros to see it. Emperor Thexkar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth. 8 years ago you came to our world and called us children. You gave us a toy for babies and told us to study hard. You made us bow before you. She paused, letting her words sink in. Today I have a message for you. We are done bowing. We are done accepting your guidance. We are done being humiliated. You wanted to teach us a lesson at New Australia. Congratulations, we learned it. We learned that your protection means nothing. We learned that your peace is built on fear. We learned that you care nothing for the species you claim to guide. Sarah's voice hardened. So here is our counter lesson, Emperor. We are humans. We are young, yes. We are primitive by your standards. But we are not weak. We are not afraid. And we are not going to stop fighting until every Valdros soldier is off our worlds and every human is free. She ended the transmission and looked at her team. Now we prepare. Because the Emperor is going to come for us with everything he has. And when he does, we're going to show him exactly what Earth's children can do. Across human space, the message spread. The rebellion was no longer scattered attacks. It was a declared war. And the galaxy was watching. Emperor Thexkar watched Sarah Chen's message 3 times. With each viewing, his 4 eyes narrowed further, and his usually calm demeanor cracked just slightly. This human dares to address me directly, he said to his advisors. This primitive child thinks she can threaten the Valdros Imperium. Your Majesty, one of his military commanders ventured carefully. The human resistance has proven more difficult than anticipated. Perhaps we should consider negotiation. Negotiation? The Emperor's voice was ice. I do not negotiate with children throwing tantrums. I discipline them. He stood from his throne, his robes flowing like liquid metal. Redirect 60% of our fleet to human space. I want every human world under complete military control. Cut off their communications. Restrict their movement. Show them what happens when they forget their place. Your Majesty, that will leave our borders with the Kryn weakly defended, another advisor warned. The Kryn are defeated. The humans are the problem now. To it. What the Emperor didn't know was that the Kryn were not defeated. They were simply waiting. And when the Valdros pulled their fleets from the border to crush humanity, the Kryn saw their opportunity and attacked with renewed fury. Across human space, the war escalated. The Valdros threw overwhelming force at every human colony. They blockaded planets, bombed resistance strongholds, and arrested thousands of suspected fighters. But for every resistance cell they destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every human they killed, 10 more joined the fight. The Valdros were learning a lesson that conquerors throughout history had learned too late. Occupying a territory is far harder than conquering it. Sarah Chen stood in a hidden command center deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around her, screens showed the status of the war across human space. The picture was grim. Mars has lost 40% of its surface infrastructure, James reported. We've evacuated most civilians to the deep tunnels, but we can't hold the surface much longer. Titan is under full blockade, Marcus added. No ships in or out. The Valdros are starving them into submission. Ganymede fell yesterday, another officer said quietly. The Valdros executed everyone they identified as resistance fighters. 2,000 people. Sarah felt each loss like a physical wound, but she couldn't let it show. Her people needed to believe they could win. "What about the Pandora Protocol?" she asked Marcus. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. 90% complete. We've hidden weapons platforms in debris fields and asteroids, even inside abandoned satellites. The Valdros sensors are too focused on active threats to notice dormant systems. When we activate them, they'll have weapons pointed at them from 1,000 directions they never suspected. And the Moon Project? Finished last week. The Valdros still think Luna is just a civilian colony with no strategic value. They have no idea we've spent the last year hollowing out the northern crater and installing the largest railgun ever built. Sarah nodded. The Pandora Protocol was humanity's secret weapon for 2 years, using resources stolen from the Valdros and technology reverse-engineered from their equipment. Humans had been placing weapons throughout the solar system, not large obvious installations that the Valdros would detect and destroy, but small, hidden and networked platforms that could wake up all at once. "How long until we're ready?" Sarah asked. "We can activate any time." "But Sarah, even with all this, we can't beat their fleet. We can hurt them badly, maybe even cripple them, but they'll still have superior numbers." "I know. That's why we need to make the Emperor commit everything to one final battle. We need to make him so angry that he stops thinking strategically and starts thinking emotionally." James understood immediately. "You want to bait him, not just bait him. I want to humiliate him the way he humiliated us. I want to make this personal." Over the next 3 months, Sarah coordinated a series of attacks designed not just to hurt the Valdros, but to embarrass them. Human fighters would ambush Valdros patrols, then broadcast footage of the battles across the galaxy. They made the mighty Valdros Empire look weak, confused, and unable to control one primitive species. The most damaging attack came when a team of human hackers, led by a brilliant programmer named Yuki Tanaka, infiltrated the Valdros communication network. They didn't just steal information. They broadcast a message across the entire Imperium to every world and every species. The message showed the truth about New Australia. It showed Valdros soldiers gunning down unarmed civilians. It showed children dying. It showed the Emperor's response, calling the massacre necessary. Then it showed human resistance fighters destroying Valdros installations. It showed Valdros soldiers retreating. It showed the supposedly invincible Imperium struggling against a species they had called children. The message ended with Sarah Chen speaking directly to the camera. "To all the species under Valdros protection, we are humans of Earth. For 8 years we bowed to the Imperium. We accepted their guidance. We believed their promises of peace. Then they murdered 15,000 of our people for peacefully protesting. Now we fight, not because we are violent, but because we have no other choice. If the Valdros can do this to us, they can do it to you. The Emperor is not your protector. He is your jailer." The message couldn't be blocked or deleted. Yuki had embedded it in the Valdros network itself, set to replicate and rebroadcast automatically. Within days, every species in the Imperium had seen it. The effect was immediate. Small protests began on several protectorate worlds. Nothing major, nothing that threatened the Imperium directly, but whispers of discontent spread. Questions were asked. The myth of Valdros invincibility was cracking. Emperor Thexkar was furious beyond reason. He had ruled for 300 years and never once had his authority been challenged like this. These humans, these primitive children, were making him look foolish before the entire galaxy. "I want Sarah Chen dead," he told his military council. "I want Earth burning. I want humanity to remember for the next 10,000 years what happens when you defy me." "Your Majesty," one advisor said carefully. "The humans seem to be concentrating their forces around Earth. Intelligence suggests they're planning a final stand there. It could be a trap." "Of course it's a trap," the Emperor snapped. "And we will spring it with such overwhelming force that it won't matter. How many ships can we deploy to Sol system? If we pull from all sectors, approximately 6,000 warships, Your Majesty. But that would leave many systems undefended. Do it. I will personally oversee humanity's destruction. I will stand on Earth's surface and watch it burn." The advisor hesitated. "Your Majesty, is it wise for you to personally enter a combat zone?" The Emperor's eyes blazed. "I have ruled for 3 centuries. I have conquered 40 worlds personally. I will not hide from primitive humans who think they can challenge me. Prepare my flagship. We leave in 3 days." What the Emperor didn't know was that several of his advisors were already having doubts. The war with humanity was costing the Imperium dearly, not just in ships and soldiers, but in reputation. The Valdros had always ruled through perceived invincibility. But humans had proven they could be hurt. Worse, the Kryn had renewed their attacks, sensing weakness, and now other species were watching, wondering if they too could resist. On Mars, Sarah received word that the Emperor himself was coming. Marcus stood beside her, looking at the intelligence reports. "He's bringing everything," Marcus said. 6,000 ships. 60% of the entire Valdros fleet. If we fail, Sarah, there's no second chance. They'll glass Earth and every human colony. "If we don't try, we're already dead," Sarah replied. "The Valdros will never stop hunting us now. Better to die fighting than live on our knees." James entered the command center. He had been coordinating the civilian evacuations from Earth. Billions of people had been moved to deep underground shelters or evacuated to the outer colonies. "Mars is as ready as it's going to be," he reported. "The civilian population has been moved to the deep shelters. We have 40,000 fighters ready to defend the underground sections. Surface defense is down to skeleton crews who know they're not coming back." Sarah nodded. Mars would fall. They all knew that. But Mars would make the Valdros pay for every meter. "What about Earth?" she asked. 3 billion people evacuated to underground facilities. Another 2 billion refused to leave. They want to see the battle, they say. They want to watch us fight. James smiled sadly. "Stubborn species, aren't we?" "It's kept us alive this long," Sarah said. She looked at the star map one last time. The Valdros fleet was 3 days away. 3 days until the largest battle in human history. 3 days until they would either win their freedom or die trying. "Send the activation codes to all Pandora platforms," Sarah ordered. "Make sure every weapon system is ready. When the Valdros arrive, I want them to walk into a nightmare." Marcus pulled up the final calculations. "The railgun on Luna is charged and ready. It has enough power for 1 shot. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. After that, it's done." "1 shot is all we need," Sarah said. "Target the Emperor's flagship. If we can kill Thexkar, we cut the head off the snake. And if we miss?" James asked. "Then we fight until there's nothing left to fight with," Sarah answered. "But we don't bow. Not ever again." Across human space, the word spread. The Valdros were coming in force. The Emperor himself would lead them. Earth would be the final battlefield. Some humans despaired. Some prayed. Some simply prepared to fight. In the deep tunnels of Mars, in the underground cities of Earth, in the hidden bases on dozens of moons and asteroids, humans made ready for war. They checked their weapons, said goodbye to loved ones, and steeled themselves for what was coming. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. By every logical calculation, they should surrender. But humanity had never been good at logic when it came to survival. They had climbed from caves to stars by being too stubborn to quit. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that should have destroyed them. The Valdros thought they were crushing a rebellion. They thought they were teaching primitive children a lesson about knowing their place. They were wrong. They weren't fighting a rebellion. They were fighting a species that had learned one crucial truth: better to die free than live in chains. The Emperor was coming to watch Earth burn. Instead, he was about to learn why young species were the most dangerous. They still remembered what it meant to fight for survival, and they had nothing left to lose. The Valdros fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm. 6,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of technology perfected over 50,000 years. At the center of the formation, larger than any other vessel, was the Emperor's flagship, the Eternal Judgment. Its hull was made of gleaming white metal, and it bristled with enough weapons to destroy a planet. Emperor Thexkar stood on his command deck, his 4 eyes surveying the primitive solar system before him. 8 small planets, a yellow sun, and somewhere among them, the species that had dared to challenge him. "Your Majesty, we are detecting the human defense fleet," his tactical officer reported. "Approximately 400 vessels, mostly converted civilian ships. They're forming a defensive line between us and Earth." The Emperor laughed. 400 ships against 6,000. Do they truly think they can stop us? Perhaps they hope to buy time for their population to evacuate, Your Majesty. There will be no evacuation. Order all ships to advance, destroy the human fleet, then proceed to Earth. I want to watch their planet burn from orbit. The Valdros fleet moved forward in perfect formation, exactly as they had done for thousands of years. It was the same formation that had won countless battles. It had never failed. That was its weakness. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the Valdros fleet advance from her command center deep beneath Mars. Every screen showed different angles, different sensors, different views of the same terrifying sight. The largest military force ever assembled coming to destroy humanity. "They're moving just like Marcus predicted," she said calmly. "Tight formation, advancing in a straight line. They're not even scanning for hidden threats. Why would they?" James replied. "They've never had to worry about ambushes. They've always had the superior force." Sarah smiled coldly. "Activate Pandora Protocol. All platforms, all weapons. Light them up." Across the solar system, 3,000 hidden weapons platforms came to life. They had been disguised as debris, as dead satellites, as asteroids. Now they revealed their true nature. Railguns fired from hidden positions in the asteroid belt. Missiles launched from fake cargo containers floating in space. Laser batteries that had pretended to be mining equipment locked onto Valdros ships and opened fire. The Valdros fleet suddenly found itself being attacked from every direction at once. Their sensors, focused on the obvious human fleet ahead of them, hadn't detected the hidden platforms. Their shields, oriented forward, were vulnerable from the sides and rear. 200 Valdros ships died in the first 90 seconds. Explosions blossomed throughout their formation like deadly flowers. "Evasive action," Emperor Thexkar roared. "Find those weapons platforms and destroy them." But the platforms were small, mobile, and networked. When the Valdros targeted one, it would go dark while others opened fire. It was like fighting shadows. The human defense fleet, seeing the chaos, charged forward. They didn't try to match the Valdros in firepower. Instead, they used the confusion to get close where the larger Valdros ships couldn't maneuver effectively. "All ships follow attack pattern Delta," Sarah ordered. "Hit and run. Don't try to win. Just make them hurt." The human ships dove into the Valdros formation like sharks attacking a whale. They fired, then immediately changed direction before return fire could hit them. They used debris for cover. They coordinated in small groups, overwhelming individual Valdros ships before moving to the next target. It was chaos. It was messy. It was nothing like the organized warfare the Valdros practiced, and it was working. "Status report," the Emperor demanded. "We've lost 400 ships, Your Majesty. Enemy casualties are approximately 100 vessels. But these weapons platforms, we can't pin them down. They're everywhere, 400 ships. In less than an hour, the humans had destroyed 400 Valdros warships. The Valdros hadn't lost that many ships in the past 1,000 years of warfare. "Continue advancing," the Emperor ordered. "Launch fighters. Clear out those platforms. And ready the main weapons. When we reach Earth, I want it reduced to rubble." The Valdros fleet pushed forward, taking casualties with every kilometer. Their fighters launched, seeking out the hidden platforms. They found some, destroyed them. But there were so many, scattered across such a vast area. Then Luna, Earth's moon, opened fire. The entire northern face of Luna had been converted into a single massive railgun, using stolen Valdros technology and human engineering. It had taken a year to build and had enough power for perhaps 2 shots. The first shot was perfect. A projectile the size of a small building, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, crossed the distance between Luna and the Valdros fleet in seconds. It hit a Valdros dreadnought and simply erased it from existence. The explosion was so massive it damaged 20 ships nearby. "What was that?" the Emperor shouted. "The moon, Your Majesty." "The moon is armed." Emperor Thexkar stared at the view screen in disbelief. The humans had turned their moon into a weapon. Their moon. The audacity was beyond anything he had imagined. "Target that moon and destroy it," he ordered. "Your Majesty, we're detecting another power surge." The second shot from Luna's railgun took longer to charge, but it was just as devastating. This time the target was the Eternal Judgment itself. The shot hit the flagship's shields at full power. The shields held barely, but the entire ship shook like a toy in a child's hands. Systems failed throughout the vessel. The Emperor himself was thrown from his command throne. "Damage report," he demanded, pulling himself up. "Shields down to 30%, Your Majesty. That weapon has more power than anything we've encountered. If they fire again, then ensure we destroy it before they can. All ships, focus fire on Earth's moon. I want it cracked open." 2,000 Valdros ships turned their weapons toward Luna. The moon lit up like a small sun as plasma fire and energy beams hammered its surface. Within minutes, the northern crater where the railgun was hidden collapsed. The weapon that had taken a year to build was destroyed, but it had done its job. It had forced the Valdros to waste time and ammunition on a static target. And every second they wasted was another second for humans to hurt them. The battle raged for 6 hours. Slowly, inevitably, the Valdros pushed through toward Earth. Their numbers were simply too great. The human defense fleet was down to less than 50 ships. The hidden weapons platforms were running out of ammunition or being destroyed, but the Valdros had paid a price. Nearly half their fleet was damaged or destroyed. Ships that had never seen real combat in thousands of years were burning wrecks drifting through space. Emperor Thexkar watched Earth grow larger on his view screen. The blue planet looked peaceful, innocent. He felt no mercy. "Prepare orbital bombardment," he ordered. "I want, Your Majesty." "We're detecting massive power signatures from Mars. The humans have weapons installations there too." The Emperor's patience snapped. "Enough. Send boarding parties to Mars. I want every human stronghold there eliminated. And launch the planetary assault on Earth. Reduce their major cities to ash." But there was one thing the Emperor hadn't planned for. One element that he had overlooked in his rage. Captain James Morrison and 200 human Special Forces soldiers had been waiting in a damaged freighter, floating dead in space among the debris of destroyed ships. When the Eternal Judgment passed close hunting for more hidden platforms, James gave the order. "Go, go, go." The freighter, which the Valdros sensors had dismissed as wreckage, suddenly fired maneuvering thrusters. It closed the distance to the flagship and magnetically clamped onto its hull. "We're attached," James reported. "Breaching now." They cut through the hull using plasma torches stolen from Valdros equipment. It took 30 minutes of tense work while the battle raged around them. Every second, James expected Valdros security to find them. But the flagship was so massive and the battle so chaotic that 200 humans in one small section went unnoticed. They breached into a maintenance corridor. Alarms immediately blared. "They know we're here," James said. "Fast and violent people. We're here for one target." They fought through the flagship like a surgical strike. The Valdros crew fought back, but they were administrators, technicians, and guards used to ceremonial duty. James's team were veterans of the Kryn War, survivors of 8 years of guerrilla fighting, and they were motivated by every human who had died under Valdros rule. The throne room was heavily guarded. 20 elite Valdros soldiers in advanced armor blocked the entrance. "Grenades," James ordered. They didn't have Valdros energy grenades. They had human-made explosives packed with ball bearings. Primitive, yes, but devastating in the enclosed corridor. The Valdros guards fell, their armor pierced by hundreds of metal fragments. James kicked open the throne room doors. Emperor Thexkar stood from his throne, his 4 eyes wide with surprise. He had ruled for 3 centuries. He had conquered worlds. He had never expected humans to reach him here, in the heart of his flagship. "You dare," he said, his voice filled with outrage. "You dare to enter my presence as an equal." "I dare," James replied, raising his weapon. But the Emperor moved faster than expected. He was old, but he came from a warrior species that had conquered the galaxy. His hand reached for a ceremonial blade at his waist. "You wish to challenge me?" Thexkar asked. "Then let us follow the old ways. Single combat, you and me, human. If you win, I will order my fleet to withdraw. If I win, your species dies." James knew it was a trap. Knew the Emperor was probably a skilled fighter. Knew he might die, but he also knew this was being recorded. Knew every Valdros in the fleet was watching. Knew the galaxy was watching. "Accepted," James said and put down his gun. The fight lasted 3 minutes. The Emperor was strong, fast, and trained in combat styles older than human civilization. But he had lived in a palace for 300 years. He had fought in ceremonies and rituals, not life-or-death struggles. James Morrison had learned to fight in the slums of Detroit, refined his skills in military special forces, and spent 8 years in actual combat. He knew every dirty trick, every weakness, every way to turn an opponent's strength against them. When the Emperor lunged with his blade, James caught the wrist, twisted, and broke it. When the Emperor tried to use his superior size, James went low, attacking joints and weak points. When the Emperor tried to wrestle, James used leverage and speed. The Emperor fell to his knees, his blade clattering across the floor. James stood over him, breathing hard, and picked up the blade. "You lose," James said. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Thexkar felt real fear. He waited for the killing blow. It didn't come. Instead, James activated his comm, broadcasting to the entire Valdros fleet. He made sure every camera in the throne room was capturing this. I am Captain James Morrison of Earth. I have defeated your emperor in single combat by your own traditions. He offered terms: if I won, the fleet withdraws. If he won, humanity dies. I won. He looked down at the emperor, who knelt before him, defeated and humiliated. You came to our world 8 years ago and made us bow. You called us children. You gave us toys and told us to learn our place. You murdered 15,000 of our people for daring to ask for dignity. You threw 80,000 human soldiers into a war as expendable shields. You tried to break us. James's voice was hard as iron. You failed. We are humans. We don't break. We adapt. We endure. We fight. He raised the Emperor's blade and pressed it against Thexkar's throat. The Emperor closed all 4 eyes, waiting for death. James lowered the blade. I don't kill defeated enemies who can't fight back. That's the difference between us. Take your fleet and leave. If you ever come to human space again, we won't show mercy a second time. The Emperor stared at him in shock. In Valdros culture, defeated enemies were supposed to be killed or enslaved. Mercy was weakness, but mercy wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the strength to choose even in victory. The Valdros fleet withdrew. Not all at once, but in groups, the ships turning away from Earth and retreating. Their emperor had been defeated, humiliated, beaten by a primitive human. The invincible Valdros had lost. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The Valdros Imperium. 50,000 years old, beaten by a species barely 8 years into space. Other species rose in rebellion. The Kryn horde pushed deeper into Valdros territory. Subject worlds demanded independence. The Imperium fractured as species after species broke away. Inspired by humanity's resistance, Emperor Thexkar was exiled. The Valdros Council of Elders, embarrassed by his failure, stripped him of his title and sent him to a remote agricultural world. He spent his remaining years working in fields under the supervision of human colonists, a fitting humiliation for one who had humiliated others. Earth was scarred. Mars was damaged. Luna was cracked and burning. Millions of humans had died, but they had won. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall if it forgot that young species still remembered how to survive. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the surface of Earth 6 months after the battle. The sky was still streaked with smoke from burning cities, but reconstruction had begun. Around her, representatives from 40 species gathered for the first meeting of what would become the Galactic Council of Free Peoples. We didn't fight to build an empire, Sarah said to the assembled delegates. We fought so no one could force us to bow ever again. Today we make that promise to every species here. No more empires. No more emperors. No more telling others they're not good enough to stand as equals. The council was formed that day. Not perfect, not without problems, but free. Species that had been subjects became partners. Dr. Marcus Webb visited the exiled emperor 1 year after the war. He found Thexkar working in a grain field, his once regal robes replaced with simple farming clothes. Why? The former emperor asked. How did primitives defeat us? Marcus sat on a fence rail and watched the sunset. You ruled for 50,000 years. You had peace, prosperity, and power. You forgot what desperation feels like. You forgot what it means to fight for survival. He looked at Thexkar directly. We spent 300,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. Ice ages that should have killed us. Predators stronger than us. Diseases that wiped out whole populations. We learned to adapt, to cooperate, to refuse to quit even when logic said we should. Marcus stood to leave. You thought we were children. You were right. But you forgot that young species are still hungry. Still desperate. Still remember what it takes to survive. You had everything to lose. We had nothing left but our freedom. That made us dangerous. The former emperor watched Marcus walk away, finally understanding. The Valdros had been mighty, but they had been comfortable. Humanity had been weak, but they had been determined. In the end, determination had won. Earth rebuilt. The scars of war slowly faded. Children born after the war grew up in a galaxy where humans stood as equals, not subjects. They heard stories of the Great War, of Admiral Chen and Captain Morrison, of the Battle of Earth and the Emperor's fall. And they learned the lesson that the Valdros had forgotten. Never underestimate those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Emperor had come to Earth expecting to watch it burn. Instead, he watched his empire crumble, because humanity had refused to bow. Instead, James activated his comm, broadcasting to the entire Valdros fleet. He made sure every camera in the throne room was capturing this. I am Captain James Morrison of Earth. I have defeated your emperor in single combat by your own traditions. He offered terms: if I won, the fleet withdraws. If he won, humanity dies. I won. He looked down at the emperor, who knelt before him, defeated and humiliated. You came to our world 8 years ago and made us bow. You called us children. You gave us toys and told us to learn our place. You murdered 15,000 of our people for daring to ask for dignity. You threw 80,000 human soldiers into a war as expendable shields. You tried to break us. James's voice was hard as iron. You failed. We are humans. We don't break. We adapt. We endure. We fight. He raised the Emperor's blade and pressed it against Thexkar's throat. The Emperor closed all 4 eyes, waiting for death. James lowered the blade. I don't kill defeated enemies who can't fight back. That's the difference between us. Take your fleet and leave. If you ever come to human space again, we won't show mercy a second time. The Emperor stared at him in shock. In Valdros culture, defeated enemies were supposed to be killed or enslaved. Mercy was weakness, but mercy wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was the strength to choose, even in victory. The Valdros fleet withdrew. Not all at once, but in groups, the ships turning away from Earth and retreating. Their emperor had been defeated, humiliated, beaten by a primitive human. The invincible Valdros had lost. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The Valdros Imperium. 50,000 years old, beaten by a species barely 8 years into space. Other species rose in rebellion. The Kryn horde pushed deeper into Valdros territory. Subject worlds demanded independence. The Imperium fractured as species after species broke away. Inspired by humanity's resistance, Emperor Thexkar was exiled. The Valdros Council of Elders, embarrassed by his failure, stripped him of his title and sent him to a remote agricultural world. He spent his remaining years working in fields under the supervision of human colonists, a fitting humiliation for one who had humiliated others. Earth was scarred. Mars was damaged. Luna was cracked and burning. Millions of humans had died, but they had won. They had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall if it forgot that young species still remembered how to survive. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the surface of Earth 6 months after the battle. The sky was still streaked with smoke from burning cities, but reconstruction had begun. Around her, representatives from 40 species gathered for the first meeting of what would become the Galactic Council of Free Peoples. We didn't fight to build an empire, Sarah said to the assembled delegates. We fought so no one could force us to bow ever again. Today we make that promise to every species here. No more empires. No more emperors. No more telling others they're not good enough to stand as equals. The council was formed that day. Not perfect, not without problems, but free. Species that had been subjects became partners. Dr. Marcus Webb visited the exiled emperor 1 year after the war. He found Thexkar working in a grain field, his once regal robes replaced with simple farming clothes. Why? The former emperor asked. How did primitives defeat us? Marcus sat on a fence rail and watched the sunset. You ruled for 50,000 years. You had peace, prosperity, and power. You forgot what desperation feels like. You forgot what it means to fight for survival. He looked at Thexkar directly. We spent 300,000 years learning to survive against impossible odds. Ice ages that should have killed us. Predators stronger than us. Diseases that wiped out whole populations. We learned to adapt, to cooperate, to refuse to quit even when logic said we should. Marcus stood to leave. You thought we were children. You were right. But you forgot that young species are still hungry. Still desperate. Still remember what it takes to survive. You had everything to lose. We had nothing left but our freedom. That made us dangerous. The former emperor watched Marcus walk away, finally understanding. The Valdros had been mighty, but they had been comfortable. Humanity had been weak, but they had been determined. In the end, determination had won. Earth rebuilt. The scars of war slowly faded. Children born after the war grew up in a galaxy where humans stood as equals, not subjects. They heard stories of the Great War, of Admiral Chen and Captain Morrison, of the Battle of Earth and the Emperor's fall. And they learned the lesson that the Valdros had forgotten. Never underestimate those who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The Emperor had come to Earth expecting to watch it burn. Instead, he watched his empire crumble, because humanity had refused to bow.